Welcome to the Falmouth Chamber of Commerce.
The Falmouth Chamber is dedicated to working on behalf of our members to make Falmouth a better place to live, work, and conduct business. We are committed to developing the economic, cultural, educational, and civic interests of our community and welcome the support from all organizations to achieve our combined goals. Whether you call Falmouth home, are a summer resident, or a visitor, we hope you take advantage of all that the Chamber has to offer.
People think that a locally owned and operated appliance store may not offer what they need. Actually, we have trained and dedicated sales associates, expert delivery and installation, professional repair service, and personal customer service. Plus, we have access to a huge local warehouse with over 6,000 models in stock. Crane Appliance. We call the Cape and Islands home. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs. 508-548-7303 or toll free at 1-800-696-7303. Our email address is carlsonprinting@aol.com. Carlson Printing for all your printing needs.
Hosting services for fctv.org are provided by MegaNet Communications. MegaNet offers a wide array of internet services including Mega Backup Cloud Service, server colocation, T1, fiber, Metro Ethernet, as well as telephone services such as hosted PBX and digital voice. Their number one goal is to keep your communications network up and running and allow you to focus on growing your business. 877-634-2638 or meganet.net.
The Quarterdeck Restaurant, located on Main Street in the heart of Falmouth, specializing in fresh local seafood and other classic American cuisine, featuring a full bar with friendly staff. And the Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar, located in North Falmouth just off Nathan Ellis Highway, featuring catering services with 2 full event rooms serving up classic Italian cuisine. The Quarterdeck Restaurant and Bucatino Restaurant and Wine Bar. We're here to serve all our friends in Falmouth.
Just about 5. There we go. Okay. Yeah, it just came on. Okay, welcome. Good evening to the March 8th, 2021 Falmouth Select Board meeting. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to start by doing a roll call, please. So when I say your name, just please note if you're present. Nancy Taylor.
Taylor present.
Jones.
Jones present.
Patterson.
Patterson present.
Brown.
Brown present.
Okay, and Megan English Braga present. We also have Town Manager Julian Suso with us, and Assistant Town Manager Peter Johnson Staub is also present. And so let me just remind folks, we're conducting this meeting remotely in accordance with the governor's orders pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a meeting that individuals can join in real time. You can find the directions and the link to do that at the select board page on the town website. And you can actually join us, and by using the chat function, let us know if you want to weigh in on a particular issue that is before us on the agenda this evening. For folks who do not feel comfortable with that, as we have been doing all along for almost a year now, which is really hard to believe, but we will also take your emails in advance. If you're asking to put a question to the board or make a comment and have it read into the record, we can do that as well. And so, the goal here is to continue to have as much participation as possible. All right, so what I want to do is just start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. So join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which it
for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I noticed tonight that we have some captions at the bottom of our screen. So hopefully that is helpful for folks at home to, if there's any issues with hearing, this allows folks to hopefully participate and be able to hear what's going on a little bit more easily.
And if people find it distracting, you go to that bar on the bottom and it says live transcript, and you can just click on that and turn it off if you'd rather not have it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, anything for recognition this week?
I'd just like to recognize all of our town volunteers that actually make this town operate. We've got so many people on committees and boards, and so many people doing so much work with little reward other than the thanks that we give occasionally. So let's do that tonight, because we do have an extraordinary group of people that volunteer in this town, and I certainly appreciate them, and I know we all do.
I think their reward is the great town that we live in, though, and all the citizen participation and involvement.
You know what I find the biggest reward is you get to meet all the nicest folks. When you're volunteering and you're working in these committees and things, you really meet a really great group of people.
Great point.
The best.
Thank you, Doug. We do have a lot of folks who volunteer, and this has been a particularly challenging year to do it in. So as we kind of hit that 1 year mark, a huge thanks to all of our committee members and volunteers for sticking in there during this tough time and continuing to do that really hard work. So thank you. Any any announcements from the board? Yes, Sam.
Yeah, I want to mention that the Community Preservation Committee's public needs assessment and hearing is going to take place this Thursday, March the 11th, and it's at 6:30 p.m. You can tune in remotely, and if you just go to the town website and look under Community Preservation Committee, there will be a link there for you to click on, and that'll get you into a real-time participation in that hearing. Thank you.
And
great.
I would just announce that the planning board is again going to take up the issue of the potential conversion of the Cape Cod Country Club into a solar farm. And there's some issue with cutting of trees, and there's groups that want to weigh in, like my group, the Falmouth Water Stewards, is not yet have a statement for it, but they plan to comment as a group after our meeting on Wednesday. I think you can send information at comments to the planning board through the Falmouth Planning on the town's website, or you can tune in and make comments on the planning board meeting tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. and use the chat function to make comments. It's a big change for our town, losing a golf course and converting into potentially solar panels, or maybe some of it will be housing, maybe all of it will be housing if they don't get the solar panel zoning approved. So it's a big change. So it might be something people want to pay attention to. Great.
Thank you, Doug. Any other announcements? Okay, I will now just remind folks that this is the period of time for public comment. Public comment is a period of time generally up to 2 minutes per person. And it is an opportunity for individuals to make a comment about something that is not on the agenda this evening. And because it is not on the agenda, the board cannot respond or engage in a conversation with you about it. It's an opportunity for you to really just make a statement to the board. Often it's about issues that we later take up as regular agenda items. So if you have a public comment, you can enter it into the chat now or note that you'd like to come on. I don't see anything at present. I will keep my eye open in case it's taking folks a little while. Was there anyone on the board? I didn't receive a request, but anyone on the board received a request to read something into public comment?
Not this week.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so let's dive right into the agenda. We have under summary of actions, application for a pledge of collateral of an all alcoholic beverages package store license. Ganjanan Package Corporation, DBA Falmouth Wine and Spirits at 322 Palmer Avenue, Falmouth.
I move approval. Jones?
Patterson, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just a quick clarification. I didn't ask this at the last meeting regarding a different package store, but this is actually using the license itself as collateral with the bank, and that's what we're approving here today. Is that correct?
I believe, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to pull up.
It's the way I read it, and it's what it seemed. I just wanted to clarify it. I don't remember seeing that before. We had one a couple of weeks ago, and it was follow-up to a previous licensing approval, and now we're seeing it again. And I don't know if this is going to become a trend, but I just wanted to kind of clarify exactly what it is. I'm pretty sure I understand it, but I just wanted to double check.
I think it's fairly standard procedure. We've seen it many times.
It seemed like it, yeah. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. So they're using the value of the license itself as collateral against their borrowing?
Is it that, or is it the business that they will be conducting, the amount of business that should be able to cover the borrowing that they might do for, free cash and what have you? I don't know. I defer to Megan.
Well, I think I do agree that it's pretty standard, and I do think that I don't think it's the license itself, but I think it's what that license represents.
Yeah.
Okay. The value of the business itself. I see. Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second. No further discussion. By roll call, please. Taylor?
Aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye.
Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
Brown?
Brown, aye.
English Braga, aye. Great, thank you. Next, we have application for a new second-hand dealer's license, Hope Restored at 75 County Road, North Falmouth. Do we have the applicant present? Okay.
Only comment I was going to make was to make sure they knew they had to do the required fingerprint-based background check, but that was in the notation we have from the lawyer. So,
Great.
I'd move approval.
Good evening to both of you. Any other? So we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Patterson, second.
Okay, great. A motion, a second. Any further discussion?
Do we want to hear from the applicants?
Yeah. Do you just want to let us know just briefly when you plan to be opening?
Sure, we're hoping to be open by mid-April.
Okay.
And so we're just kind of getting everything ready for that opening there.
And I
Wonderful.
thought I saw you were affiliated with a nonprofit of some sort. Is that right? Or is this just a business?
I am. I'm actually a pastor of a church. So the idea of this store is that everything that we get that comes in for profit is going to go right back into the community. A lot of nonprofits here in the area, such as the Falmouth Service Center, Fairwinds Clubhouse, Wings of Falmouth. We just want to give back. So it's our way as a church to do that. And so that's what we're that's the whole idea behind it.
Great. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, by roll call, please. Taylor?
Taylor, aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye.
Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
Brown?
Brown, aye.
English Braga, aye. Thank you. Thank you both.
Good
Hey,
luck.
Attorney
Thanks so
Bourget,
much.
nice to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay. Sorry, next, I'm just having issues with a little bit of issues with my technology this evening. Okay. Next, we have authorized town manager to enter into an agreement with a qualified independent consultant for community environmental, health, engineering, and similar services related to Mayflower Wind activities and potential presence in the town of Falmouth, and funded on a reimbursement basis by agreement with Mayflower Wind. Mr. Suso, do you just want to remind for the public what this is and what stage this is at? Because I know that this issue has been a issue of concern for a lot of individuals. I want to make sure it's really clear where the process is at with this particular vote tonight.
Certainly, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you recall, Mayflower Wind had contacted the town and was given temporary short-term approval to do some testing at, I believe, 3 different locations in town, which has been underway since you authorized that. We're expecting to hear back from Mayflower Wind with potentially with a one or more formal proposals to consider some activity in the town. Prior to that, we are discussing with a couple different qualified consultants, assisting the town in reviewing and evaluating what we receive from Mayflower Wind to assist the board in making any determinations that you need to make in the future. And as a reminder, Mayflower Wind has confirmed that they will reimburse the town for the cost of that consulting work. So I do not have the specific name of a single consultant. I'm working with town council, and we're discussing a couple different qualified firms that I anticipate we will likely bring forward between now and your next regular meeting.
Great, thank you. Go ahead. Any questions from the board? Doug Brown.
Is that like an RFQ, or do you just kind of do some research and inquire privately? How do you do that?
There's no requirement for a formal RFQ. We've contacted a couple different, actually 3 different firms that appear to be qualified to have a range of engineering, environmental, and similar background to assist the town in really this major potential initiative.
Would it be right to assume that you exclude the expert that testified on behalf of Mayflower Wind that evening, the last time we had a presentation, because it seemed like they're kind of working with them, so we would want somebody more independent? Did you take that into consideration?
One of our requirements is that whoever we engage would have no connection with Mayflower Wind.
Right, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the board? Do I have a motion? Excuse me, seeing none, do I have a motion to authorize? Let me just check and make sure. I saw one comment in the chat. I think that was from earlier.
That was from Seth, I think.
Yes, okay, that's what you were asking. Yep.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, do I have a motion to authorize this action?
So moved. I move we authorize town manager to pursue a consultant for independent monitoring and advice on Mayflower Wind.
Great, thank you. Do I have a second?
Patterson, second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Seeing no further discussion, by roll call, please. Taylor?
Aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye.
Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
Brown?
Brown, aye.
English Braga, aye. Thank you. Okay, moving in a little bit early, so hopefully Scott is available, but we're going to have a discussion about, yep, here he is as usual, perfectly on time. Welcome, Scott. We're going to start by getting your update, and then we're going to kind of talk a little bit specifically about future special events that we know are going to be coming before us. So welcome.
Sure, thanks. You guys hear me okay? So do you know the first time that I came in front of you to do a presentation was March 9th, 2020. So we're just about at a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Feels like it.
It feels a little bit longer than a year, I'd have to say. I'm going to take screen. Let me share screen so I can get through it.
Yep.
I see a few gray whiskers. I don't remember those gray whiskers last year.
Actually, don't get me started, because I noticed about a dozen gray hairs on the top of my head. You guys see the screen okay, where it says vaccinations, phase 1 and 2? Okay. So we're currently in phase 2, 75 and older, everybody in phase 1. Yeah, like first responders, 65 and any individual with certain medical conditions. I think that's where we were at last time we met. Beginning on the 11th, early education and K through 12 workers will become eligible. So that's where we are in terms of who's eligible for a vaccine.
Scott, I'm not on this. I'm not on
Yep.
the same page you are. I mean, my,
No, we're on, you have a page that is like a Google, it says scheduling made easy.
Oh, okay, so I went to the wrong one. Let me stop sharing.
Yep.
I clicked on the wrong one.
Thanks, Sam.
Here we go. I have 2 screens. That better?
Yes, it is now.
Yep,
Okay,
that's it.
sorry about that. So we're at, like I said before, this is where we're at. So beginning on the 11th this week, early education K through 12 workers are eligible. Okay. As far as vaccine supply goes, we're still in a very limited short supply. We're still sort of in the same state we've been in the last couple weeks for the most part. It's allocating the vaccines mainly to the government, from the federal government to the pharmacies, mass vaccination sites, 20 communities that have the greatest COVID-19 burden, which is not us. Barnstable County Health and the Environment, which is the BCEG, is still getting their 1,170 doses per week. Right now, that's all going to second dose clinics to take care of the people we did on the first dose. Okay, so that's where we are with that. They were able to get 1,200 doses of the Johnson & Johnson, which are in 2 clinics this week. They did fill up quickly because, like we all know, it's kind of like trying to get the golden ticket to the chocolate factory right now, and it's been quite difficult. And I'll talk a little bit how it's getting a little bit better in a second. As far as the fairground site, the Orleans site, the Eastham site, that'll be rotated around. Our main site is going to be 4Cs. It used to be the Melody tent. The 4Cs was originally being held open for the state vaccination, mass vaccination, which didn't happen. So 4C, Barnstable County is going to be doing the 4Cs as the main hub for vaccination, and then rotating through the fairgrounds, New Orleans and Eastham. The reason that there's so few appointments available locally is entirely due to the limited supply. It's not our ability to vaccinate. We have the ability to vaccinate. If you are a veteran over 55, you can go through the VA, which I think the closest hospital for us would be Brockton. But you can schedule it through the VA. Okay.
Excuse me, Scott.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you. Is anybody else?
Anybody else having trouble with me?
Oh, now I hear you better.
That's
Okay.
better.
Right now, but you were
Let me just-
fading out.
Oh, my apologies.
Thank you.
So it is available for veterans if you want to visit the VA. Now, our vaccination sites, again, Gillette, Dartmouth, 4Cs, Fairgrounds, and also pharmacies. Right now, the East Falmouth CVS and the Walgreens and Mashpee are our closest spot. But it's still in the same sort of difficult to get, and booking is quick. Senator Sia, Senator Moran got together, and we have this Cape Cod Regional Vaccine Consortium. And what they've been able to do is work out with the state to provide doses each week to Cape Cod Healthcare to be on a limited basis, but at the 4Cs for the most vulnerable residents and senior citizens. So what they've asked towns to do is to provide a list of those most vulnerable residents who do not have the ability to self-register and will be or not be able to go to a mass vaccination site. So what we want residents to do is to call the senior center, and Jill and the group over there at the Council on Aging has done a great job with getting through this and taking the calls and vetting everybody. Is you want to call the senior center to qualify to be placed on that list that's routinely updated and provided to Cape Cod Healthcare. So I provide that list on a weekly basis. And that's for people that cannot register, can make it to the 4Cs, but can't self-register. So, you could call the senior center if that is the case, and you can speak to them. The homebound, and those who definitely cannot make it to any clinic, cannot leave the house, are also being vaccinated, but they're being done by the Community Health Center of Cape Cod. And we've started that process already. That's for truly homebound only because it does take quite a bit of time. I think one nurse can do 2 people per hour because there is a wait time, the whole time to make sure that the person doesn't have a reaction. So the homebound is very difficult to do. But if you're truly homebound, we want to also have you call the senior center. So that's something that's relatively new since we've talked the last time. So there's a capability for that. And that's going to be for the most vulnerable residents that really don't have a shot at the golden ticket and that really can't either use a computer, don't have the access or the ability or the means to get to where they need to get to. And again, call the senior center for that. In terms of vaccine itself, we're up 3% from last week, or 20.9% of all doses was shipped to Barnstable County. We are up 6,000 doses administered in a week. That's a very slow 200,000. That's going to take some time, but that's where we're at. In terms of our percentage of residents with doses administered, we're at 24%, up 4.2% have gotten at least their first dose, which and about 9% have received their second dose. And so that's been sort of a slow process, obviously, but people are getting to it. The pharmacies, even if they're only doing 50 a day, still add up. So they're still sort of adding up to that. And people are making it to the mass vaccination sites. But obviously we wish it was better, but that's where we're at. In terms of our cases, we've had 4 relatively good weeks. You can see where in the December, January range, the cases were quite high. We're in a much better spot, at least in the 25 to 35 range for cases per week, which given that we're in the winter and the spike that we had isn't too bad. This past week, the red dot indicates where we are at this week, about halfway through the week, because I do take this in Thursdays, not quite half the way. We have one cluster that developed, which has been half of these cases. So I think as far as we're at sort of the same spot, even though I think this week will be a little bit higher, primarily because we did have a cluster of 9 cases associated to one event. So that's my update as far as vaccinations and where we are with cases. And I think, do you want me to just run right to where we are for guidance? So the guidance, the governor, effective March 1st, no longer are restaurants subject to the percent of seating capacity. You're allowed to have as many as you want, as long as you have the social distancing portion of it, which would limit your number anyway. Primarily because you can only fit so many tables if you're keeping the distance between the tables. No more than a 90-minute stay. Some indoor now can go to some indoor performance venues such as concert halls, theaters, and indoor 50% with a 500-person max. So those 2 are effective March 1st. Starting March 22nd, gathering limits for both indoor and outdoor events is increased. So it would go from 100 indoor and 150 outdoor now, starting March 22nd. Private settings would be 10 and 25. So, anything that's not under 5,000 of a capacity has to be in the 100 to 150 based on indoor or outdoor. If you're over 5,000, so you go into the bottom right-hand column, it says effective March 22nd, indoor and outdoor stadiums, arenas, and ballparks will reopen at a 12% capacity limit. And a large venue is defined of having 5,000 or more. So things that fall in that category, at the bottom, I gave you some examples: street festivals, parades, and agricultural festivals, road races, and other large outdoor organized amateur or professional athletic events. That's just cut and paste from the state. So that would affect a lot of our sort of the fireworks, the road races, and different things like that. So that's kind of where we're at in a current state. And unfortunately, I guess you guys are all going to have to start making decisions on. The event coordinators have to start making decisions real soon. They have to come to you. And so that's where we're at. I don't have a crystal ball. I think that's, eventually if the weekly cases stay or decline, then you would have an increase over 12% at some point in time. Obviously, it does say they're, subject to public health data. And as long as we continue on the vaccinations and the cases stay low, then I can see that moving up at some point to what I couldn't tell you. To what level? Is there any questions before I unshare the screen? Any of that?
Go ahead, Doug.
I've just not really a question. I have one, but the
Sure.
comment would be that when I looked at that map and you showed me the percentages, I guess
Yep.
really Cape Cod is not doing.
This one here?
Yeah, I guess we're not really doing
Yeah,
bad at all. I mean, it seemed like we were so far behind, but I guess everybody's behind.
Well, there's a couple things to look at. If you look at Berkshire County, where they're a little bit higher than we are, at least with second doses.
Yeah.
They have a high elderly population, and so we should be sort of similar to we're actually older than they are,
Right.
but so we should be a bit higher than where we are. I think people they really want the vaccine and are doing what they can to get the golden ticket to get to the chocolate factory, get their dose. And some people are having to travel long distance to do it. It's unfortunate. It's not the way it is, but the executive branch decided to privatize a lot of it, and that's kind of where we're at. I think the pharmacies are doing a lot more than we think they are doing, even though you may drive by there and not notice. They are getting some done.
Right.
And 1,200 here and 1,000 doses here does make a difference at some over time.
And I do have one question, if I could. Have you heard any more about that mobile facility that the county was going to look into? I forgot to ask at the
For
assembly
homebound?
meeting. Yeah.
Well, going back up to the slide here, what Senator Sierra Moran had asked is we're partnered up with the Community Health Center of Cape Cod. They're actually going out and doing it.
Mhm.
So that's where we're at with the homebound.
Okay.
As far as a mobile unit, I guess you would say that is a mobile unit. It's going out and doing it.
Okay.
I think we've got a dozen or so done already. So, we're getting there, whether it's a mobile unit or not. Obviously with J&J, it makes it a little bit easier. It's a little more difficult to do with the Pfizer, the Moderna, but that's what we're using.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Doug Jones and then Sam.
Without, I guess, violating any privacy, you said there was an event that created the last cluster. Can you tell us anything about that event so we make sure to tell people don't do those things?
Well, it's a housing situation.
Okay.
So it was just basic social distancing in a housing situation.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, I know that educators were supposed to be up for vaccinations, but apparently they're not going to allow them to be done in the state sites. And I'm just curious to know about that because, you would think that they have an employee list and they could just work through the list. And if the person's willing to get vaccinated, they could call them up to make it very efficient once the supply is there. And, they can even kind of figure out how to spread it out over a period of time so they don't soak up all the vaccines, assuming they even have access to them. Did you hear any rationale on why they chose not to use the state vaccination clinics?
No, they didn't give us an explanation. And also they didn't give us the ability to sort of, let's say we have 500 staff, and we just can't get 500 discrete doses just for staff. They're on the open market. And so that they didn't, the only ability we've had so far to pick a discrete population is eligible elderly senior housing, where we got to sort of bypass the whole system, give the name, the quantity, and then get it place an order. But we haven't had that ability for, let's say, teachers. If they gave us the ability, then we could do it. That's not a problem. We do have nurse staff that we wouldn't even need to do much to get the doses, but they haven't set it up. So they're, sort of on the open market like the rest of us. And that's where we're standing. Again, but that's subject to change on a moment's notice. Things do change. If you ask me January how I thought we'd be vaccinating, we're doing it quite differently than any of us would have anticipated it.
Yeah.
So hence the need to plan for a lot of things that we haven't done.
You did it for the public safety staff. That's why I wondered where you have an organized, department. It's fairly efficient to call people. Anyway, you don't know, and I don't know that, but I thought you might have some insights.
Yeah. What's the number of people that are getting served at the Barnstable County Fairground?
Well, we've done 600 twice at the fairgrounds. Basically, what'll happen is when there's more doses, we'll have that running at least once a week. Okay. Twice a week if we get more. It's just right now the hub's going to be 4 Cs. And it's a little easier at the 4 Cs being inside. You need less. It's a more monumental effort. There's literally probably 30 volunteers that do the fairgrounds versus 4 Cs. You need at least half that because they're not worrying as much about traffic control, making people stay in the cars and so forth. So, but you'll see the 4 Cs is the most frequent place used, and then we rotated a mobile crew to go around and go to the different ones. I'd like to see once a week by April I would love to see something like that, but again, it depends on the doses.
Okay.
Any other questions for Scott in general? I do want to return back to the kind of special events piece just for a minute, Scott.
Sure.
So, obviously this is kind of beyond, as you noted, we have what we have now, but what is your understanding as they stand right now? Something like a road race doesn't take place in an arena, but are they kind of considering, so the way our road race would work, can you just tell us a little bit about what the guidance says right now for something like that?
It doesn't give it detail. I was reading it before I put this together for you tonight. I noticed it did say road races and other large outdoor organized events fall under the 5,000 or more or greater than, depending on the event. A small local hometown 5K is not the road race.
Right.
The road race, I would say, seems like by reading the guidance that they would say that would just be 5,000 or more capacity. But it says, it's kind of, I'm reading it right now without having to share screen. It says outdoor and indoor stadiums, arenas, and ballparks at 12%. Then it goes into large venues, and then it gives you an example of a road race. And it's not really, they don't really fit well. You'll get more guidance soon, I'm thinking, on it, especially as the weather starts. Then you're going to get more and more people asking questions. It's kind of a little all over the place.
Yeah, just, as I start to think about some of the activities that we have here in the summer, so many of them are those outdoor, but not in an arena, obviously. So I guess we just have to kind of wait for that guidance. But at this point, maybe, if they were looking at that $5,000 people cap, and having it at 12%, that's obviously much smaller scale than anything that we do with our road race or some of our other activities.
So I would say that the large, reading this, I would say the three places that we have greater than 5 would be fireworks, road race, and the fairgrounds.
Right.
Would be the 5 places that I could think of that we consistently have 5,000. Everything else would fall to the 100 or 150 outdoor. Really, that's a real steep drop right there.
Right.
But I think there'll be more in there as spring hits. We're not the only place that does events, so I think the state's going to have to better define what they're
looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions at all for Scott? Go ahead, Doug.
Do you have any insight, Scott, as to who is given the guidance? Is it like a team of professors from Harvard, or who tells the governor what's best to do?
Okay, so you have the Department of Public Health, who probably oversees it, but then DESE is the Department of Early and Secondary Education, does the guidance for schools. Division of Labor Standards is doing a lot of the businesses. So it's each, and then we also have the senior housing group that did what they liked for the senior housing. So I think you'd probably have some sort of a roundtable Zoom going on between DPH and a few people from DESE for the school guidance and so on. They run it by the governor, and it goes from there.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. Anything else for Scott?
Nope.
Scott, thank you very much. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have Peter McConerty is going to join us, and he's going to give us an update on the Route 28 project status, which obviously has been kind of there for a long time, and I know people are wondering what's going on. Welcome, Peter. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Exactly, Megan. The project's been going on for a long time. I'll just, if you don't mind, just do a brief history of the project, of Main Street, the entire project. In approximately 2015, 2016, the project went on board with basically the water main project. We were doing the water main project, and as we were doing the water main project, when it got completed after that, we were going to start the roadway improvement project through the town portion and the state portion. So the project consists of 3 segments: the Main Street segment, and the Main Street segment is under town jurisdiction. The Davis Straits section, that's under Mass DOT jurisdiction. And the T-ticket section, that's under Mass DOT jurisdiction. So where we are today, I'll go through each segment. On Main Street, last year, as everyone knows, we repaved up Main Street and down through the Queens Byway. We had 2 projects going on. We had our Public Works project going on, and we had the water main project going on. And we paved up to Shore Street. And then we stopped to get through the summer. That's when the restaurants were coming out, and we were doing the outdoor dinings and the seatings and the different options going on. So we wanted to get through the downtown area and get that completed. Since then, the water main contractor continued down Main Street. And anyone that drives down Main Street right now, anywhere between Shore Street and Falmouth Heights Road, realizes that the road is not in good shape right now. The contractor is working in those areas. He's finalizing the completion of the services, and we're looking at doing final pavement in that area, bringing it back to existing conditions this spring up until Falmouth Heights Road. And then on section 2 is Mass DOT. That has been paved. What happened is under the contract, Mass DOT allowed the the contractor to pave one road. The water main went down one side of the street, either the south side or the north side of the street, and it switched back and forth. And the Mass DOT allowed them to pave from the double yellow line to the edge line, and then any trench marks going across the roadway with a full depth pavement. So that's been done from Sandwich Road all the way back to Jones Road where the Stop and Shop is. What's needed to be completed this spring is the section from the Stop and Shop up to Falmouth Heights Road. So that still needs to be milled out and paved, and that's on the Mass DOT section. And then the third section is the section of the project, I think, that for roadway surfacing and for roadway improvements got the most people want to know what got the most interest of it. So the town, when the project went together and we were starting the project, we had engineers working on the different sections of the roadway improvements. We had engineers working on the utilities, and then we had engineers working on the roadway improvements. And as everyone knows, the town or the selectmen had put together a working transportation group back in 2017, 2018, to work on that section of Route 28 that goes from Sandwich Road out to Oxbow Road. And they met, I believe, bi-weekly for a while, and then they met monthly for a while at Town Hall. Previous Director of Public Works, Raymond Jack, attended. I attended many of the meetings, and the committee put together a set of concept plans that they wanted to bring to Mass DOT. So I don't have the dates exactly correct, but I think it was probably a year and a half ago, maybe a little longer, that the concept plans were completed and were bringing to Mass DOT. We met with Mass DOT several times, and in the meantime, we also switched transportation consultants. At one time, we had TEC Engineering, and then we went to GPI out of Stoneham. GPI is more familiar with the town. They're more familiar with MassDOT regulations and how they do their roadways, their segments, their complete streets. They're just much more familiar with the MassDOT process. So Mass DOT reviewed the plans. We're working through GPI now with the plans. They reviewed the concept plans, and there was a good amount of areas that they did not like. They did not approve, and they did not like certain things as shoulders. They wanted wider shoulders. They wanted wider sidewalk. They wanted wider area on the bike path, and they wanted wider area on the buffer strip between the roadway and the bike path on the south side. So there was several areas that they did not like. We have requested written comments from Mass DOT several times, and we have not received them, but we did receive verbally those comments that they did make. So I think at this time, I think it would be appropriate, if approved through the selectmen, if working with the town manager, to get that original group back together and discuss the segment 3. Basically, the segment 3 is going to change. It's not going to be the concept that they put together. The design, some of the aspects of it can stay, but the widths and the dimensions are going to change, and it's going to go further into the layout, which is going to go further into the front yards of the properties. So working with the town manager, I think would be appropriate to close the loop on this, get that original group back together, show them the set of plans and the concepts that we had, what Mass DOT is looking to do, and then close that loop. One comment that the highway director from Mass DOT had mentioned is that although Section 3 received the most interest and received most of the attention, they have crash clusters, and they have information that says that they would like to switch to Section 2, which is Section 2 would be Falmouth Heights Road up to Sandwich Road. They have crash clusters that have happened over the years in that area that they think can be addressed. So they would like to switch from Section 3 to Section 2. So I think we just want to vet that out, and we can still keep on moving with Section 3, but I think Section 3 is going to take some more time with the new variables that Mass DOT wants to go with. So their question, their comment is to move to Section 2. When the project first started under the water main project, we surveyed from Queens Byway all the way out to the other side of Oxbow Road. So we have that survey's already been completed, and a concept has been done, not a percent design, not a 25% design, but a concept has been done through the previous engineers. So we could use that concept and move forward with Mass DOT. Section 2 right now, there's a lot going on with Section 2. The planning department's doing their new Worcester Court initiative, Spring Bars Road initiative. They have the new building initiatives that they want to work through with the Davis Straits area. So that might be a good point where all groups can get together to work on that. Mass DOT has certain restrictions, and they want what they want, and they're not going to allow anything when it comes to complete streets. They want what they want to get for complete streets. They have very exact designs that they're going to stick with in that area. And I believe that roadway section, I'm not sure if it's 40 or 45, but they're gonna treat that like a heavy volume high-speed roadway. So
Which part, Peter, I just want to, that last comment that you made, is that about the section 3 or section 2?
Section 2, that would be from Falmouth. Mass DOT would like to switch back to Section 2, which would be from Falmouth Heights
Road
up to Sandwich Road. So in the original design, at Falmouth Heights Road, there was a roundabout proposed.
Mm-hmm.
At Dillingham, the end of Dillingham, there was a traffic signalized intersection. They have to do an alternatives analysis. So they looked at a traffic signalized intersection and also a roundabout. And there was not enough room in that intersection to do a roundabout with all the business sides. So they chose a signalized intersection. And then on Sandwich Road, there's a third signalized intersection. So there's a lot of work that can be done in that section. So the way Mass DOT looks at it is through so naturally, most likely we'd be going through JTC funding for this to go through the Cape Cod Commission and the JTC with all the 15 towns in the Cape. So the way the JTC works is they have a 5-year program. So right now they're 5 years out. So they're at 2026. And I believe next month they're going to be looking at the next section of roadways for the 5-year program. So we would be on, most likely with Section 2, with getting the design and going through, we'd probably be on year 7 or maybe 7 or year 8.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that puts that Section 3 more than 10 years out.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we can continue to work on that section. That section is a more rural area. There's trees, there's the sidewalks, there's different, road incidental items that we're going to have to be able to work around. Whereas the phase 2, you got a sidewalk, curbing, the roadway, curbing, and the sidewalk, and then you got the wall. So.
Right. Okay. I saw Doug Brown and then you, Sam. Doug's had his hand up for a while. Go ahead, Doug. You're muted.
Just wanted to clarify that for this year, we're going to do all the paving all the way to Oxbow Road. It's not going to include any of the sidewalk improvements or any of that. And then this other project with widening and the shared use path and whatever we come up with on sections 1, 2, and 3, that's going to be way down the road. So I just want to make that clear for people, because we kind of transitioned into the other talk about the other stuff, and then I don't think that was clear. And then the other comment I have, now that it seems like we're going to be so much further out, can we maybe consider some lane width, changes so that we can maybe make it a little bit more bicycle friendly? Is there any latitude with the contractor to adjust the lane width maybe a little bit and reduce the speeds and accommodate some bicycles? Because we're not going to be able to do any extra paving, but maybe we can create a sense of a little bit safer space with painting?
Yeah, so there was two parts to that. The first part of that is you're absolutely correct, Doug. The project started off with the water main project. It was almost like a two-prong approach. It was the water main project, and then once that got completed, the surface road project was going to come in after. It was going to be years later, but it was going to come in after. So they're two totally separate projects. So at this time, the asphalt, the work, other than some loaming and seeding, as far as our contractor with the water main, it's completed for section 3 and it's completed for section 2. They only have to repave the section from Falmouth Heights Road to Jones Road. So the paving's already been completed on that. So what's left is after that is the town portion of it from Shore Street to Falmouth Heights Road. So you're muted. I'm sorry, Doug.
So the Oxbow to Sandwich Road is done, and it'll stay that way until we come up with a new plan.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And then for making the roadways narrower and making different lane changes in the Mass DOT section, that's through Mass DOT. It's already been striped. I mean, if Mass DOT wants to come down and do that, I mean, we'll certainly work with them to do that, but that's their jurisdiction to do so.
Okay.
So.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you
Sam?
for clarifying that.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Sam.
Peter, you make it sound like the state is very rigid on the complete streets standards, and I didn't read the policy, the complete streets policy, that way at all. I mean, is these just bureaucrats that aren't willing to kind of compromise? Because there was a lot of words given toward, local conditions and local ambiance, those kinds of things in the complete streets policy or standards. And here I'm hearing from you is that they're not budging a bit on it.
Sam, it's not that they're not budging a bit on it, it's that complete streets it's continually changing. From what it was 5 years ago to what it is today, it's just changing. So the Mass DOT looks at it as this roadway speeds and their density within their roadways. Yeah. So if you had a residential road or a road maybe like Sandwich Road, something like 35 miles an hour, or actually 30 miles an hour, you could do a lot more with complete streets than you can do with a high-speed roadway that would be over 45 miles an hour. But when they start getting over 45 miles an hour, Mass DOT does not like the bicycles to be on the same pavement and the same roadway as the vehicles. They want them separated either vertically or a horizontal barrier, a horizontal distance between them. And that's what I mean by that. So something like section 2, they would want to be looking at however their design would come through. They actually have, Mass DOT actually has groups now. They have a section now that works just on complete streets. So you'll have the highway section and they'll go through the highway section and then it'll get sent to the complete streets section and they look at strictly complete streets. So
okay,
it's not,
but I mean, the people that live along there considered to be a residential street. Can we just drop the speed limit down to 35 or get them to drop it down and say, hey, treat it as more of a residential or mixed use kind of area?
Yeah. My experience in the past with Mass DOT is they're reluctant to lower speed limits. I was told by a traffic engineer from Mass DOT many years ago that their business is to move vehicles, to move trucks, to move pedestrians, to move, and if they slow down the speed limit on it, then it's going to create congestion either going east or west across the Cape.
Right.
So
yeah, you had raised that issue I remember this exact issue coming up, Peter, when we were talking about the crossing near Crabapples. And one of the things people were talking about was lowering speed limits, and we were getting a lot of pushback. And the best we kind of did was we were able to get the sign moved for kind of with that lower speed limit pushed back a little. But I remember this being the exact issue that was coming down from the state, that their goal is to facilitate transfer of people. Still, even with complete streets, it's still very vehicle focused. that they were pushing back. I remember that was the same issue then.
I mean, Sam, I was speaking to Section 2 being a high-speed roadway. On Section 3 being more of a rural area, they would look at different designs, but they would not, on Section 3, they would not look at something like a sharrow in the roadway and sharing the roadway, vehicles and bikes being on the same. They wouldn't. That's just something that they wouldn't look at. So they would want in an area like that. Even in an area out there like that, they would not want bike lanes and bicycles on the street. They just, a bicycle's doing 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour maybe, and you got vehicles doing, 40, 45 miles an hour with the trucks or what have you. So they look heavily upon that. I'm sure they would look and work with the town when they can, if they want to get the project done, and they know there's some interest with the town. But there's certain items that they lean on and they'll be strict on.
Well, I agree with the public safety issues. That's not my issue. My issue is, they want to move traffic. Well, that's not an area that I think has to be 45 miles per hour. If we can get them to basically back off a little bit and give us a little more flexibility on how we treat that neighborhood.
Yeah. And like I say, I think this is something that, we can continue with this group. We continue working on this. But I'm just putting it out there that Mass DOT did indicate to us that they would like to go from Section 3 to look at Section 2 because of this more crash clusters and more interest. It might work out better because we have other design with other departments and other things going on in that Davis Straits area.
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Great. Thank you. Doug Brown, did your hand come up one more time?
Yes, I'm just curious. Can you highlight what some of the biggest challenges are on that section that we're having trouble meeting the requirements? Is it like across from Teeticket Path where there's the wetland there? What are the biggest challenges that we?
So we went up and this was actually before the COVID started. We had a couple of virtual meetings after that, but before the COVID started, I think it was just before it started, we the town engineer, previous director of public works, Ray Jack, and myself went up with our engineers and met with the state, and I believe the original concept plans had the lane width of 11 feet, and then they had 2-foot lane between, the fog lane between the white line and the edge of the roadway. And then they had a grass strip, and then they had an 8-foot bike lane. They didn't like that. They didn't like the 2-foot shoulder lane. They wanted a 4-foot shoulder lane. They wanted a wider grass strip. I believe the concept plans had like a 2-foot grass strip. They wanted a 4-foot grass strip, or actually they say 3 to 5. And then the 8-foot bike lane, and then they wanted a full 6-foot on the other side. Didn't have to be a bike multimodal route, but they wanted a wider sidewalk. And as you move down there and started getting through the designs, some of the signs got in the way for some of the businesses down there. There was a wall down there that moving down across from Falmouth lumber that's going to be in the layout that they're going to have to work with. So it wasn't really the concept; it was the width that we had on the plans. The width of what we were giving them for the shoulder lanes and the buffer strips between the roadway.
So it's not just a couple problem areas; it's the size of the whole thing and the whole length of it.
Yeah, I think that the basic concept of it they were okay with. It was just the design factors and the widths they were looking at.
Okay.
And like I say, this has taken a long time. I will agree it has taken a long time to go through this. But we do have a good working relationship with Mass DOT, working with them and working with our engineers. It's just one more, so if you send something to Mass DOT, sometimes they have to send it into Boston, or they have to send it to different departments. So it goes between departments, and there's no reason why it should have taken 2 years for them to get back to us to say no. But
so then, given the fact that most of the work's already done, if we want to do some restriping, what would that process look like? Would we have to apply a whole new small plan of what we would be doing along that way?
On Section 3?
Oh, well, on any of it or all of it. whatever
Yeah.
the parts, well, not just, section 3 is there's not a lot you can do there, but on the other section in 2 from Sandwich Road to whatever part's not done, I mean,
Yeah.
can we have some flexibility there and then maybe use whatever we do in that section as a model for, some sort of improvised improvements on the other sections that are already done? Because it's going to be a while before we get any real changes.
It is going to be a while. I mean, it's something that we can approach the Mass DOT and say, would like to start working on this. Now, they're going to want to start working on this. Can we change the striping of the roadway with it right now? But like I said, I think in that area, I think they're going to be a little bit more rigid with the vehicles in that area and having bicycles and pedestrians within the roadway. They're really getting into this in that type of area. They're getting into these separated paths, but we can bring it forward to them. What I'd like to do is I need to reach out to Mass DOT anyways, so we can bring that up with them. And we can with our consultant, we can talk to them about that.
Okay,
But I think it's appropriate if it is approved that that we do go back to the original group and at least close the loop on that and let them know. I mean, they put a lot of work into that.
Yes.
And a lot of time into that. So it's I think it would be appropriate.
So from us, Peter, you want us to reach out? Is this the right time to do that so they can kind of hear from Mass DOT about, I know they didn't give us written comments, but just kind of have that relayed and close that gap? Is there a time, is it since the focus is shifting to 2, do we wait? What's your time for when you'd like us to do that?
I think within the next couple of weeks, if I think a virtual meeting with, myself, the town engineer, we can have our consultant, town manager, anybody that wants to attend and just have a discussion with them, and we can share the plans on the screen and we can show them,
great,
what we've done. Because we did 2 different concepts for that section, and Mass DOT really wasn't crazy about both concepts on that.
Okay. So Mr. Suso, can you help coordinate that since you have that original list of those individuals and help coordinate with Peter so that we can do that in the next couple of weeks?
Certainly, we will do so.
Great. Thanks, Peter. That's any other questions for Peter for an update?
If I could just give one, I know
Yes.
approximately about a month ago, we had, I had spoke to the board about Route 151. And I know there was a petition going around and a list that was going around. And just to let everyone know, we are working on that. We're looking for the funding to work on that. And I've been getting prices to do, to replace the signing on that, to look at street lighting up there on that, and to change some of the striping up there to more of a DOT high-speed roadway design. So that we are moving forward with that. The Highway Department's looking at replacing all the signs. The Parks Department has already been up and they've been opening up several of the intersections. They have a few more to go, but they have been up there cutting back and brushing back. So.
Great, thank you.
I saw the guys working, and also the highways look awful clean lately. Looks like you guys been working out there too, huh?
Yeah, I think the Alan Robinson's got their people out there. The litter, the Falmouth free litter there.
I heard you were helping.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Route 151's a tough road. I mean, you pick it up and the next day those trucks go down that road without covers on it and it's covered again. So
right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter, very much. We really appreciate it, and we'll definitely get that group of folks back together and close that loop and kind of continue shifting gears to that second phase instead. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Have a good night. Thank you.
You too.
Next, we are going to have a report from our Transportation Management Committee around, they sent us a report on improving access to downtown. So they are going to update us and welcome. I see Allison Leshin coming on. Hi, Allison.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome. Good.
Thank you.
Good. Go right ahead.
Okay, so I am going to.
Madam Chair, you also have Ed DeWitt, the chair of that committee.
Oh, good.
I
Okay.
believe.
All right.
Great. Yeah, so I'm going to present tonight, and then I ask that Ed be admitted as to help with
I see
backup
him.
on the Q&A.
Yep, I see him coming on.
Okay,
So
here he
why don't
comes.
you
Yeah.
go ahead? It looks like they're admitting him now. So welcome to Ed, and go ahead, Allison.
Okay, so I need to be able to share my screen. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Before I do that, though, I do just want to acknowledge the rest of the committee. So again, I'm presenting, but I will have backup, a lot of backup. So Ed DeWitt is the chair. We've got Paul Dreyer, who's our planning board rep, Chris McGuire, who's the bike and ped committee rep, Paul Grunden and Ralph Herbst are ad hoc members or at large, I guess they're called. And then Jane Perry, until recently, was part of the committee. She recently resigned. So just want to give them credit. So I will share.
Allison, Paul Grunden is the Commission on Disabilities representative.
Oh, yes, that's right. I'm sorry. I forgot that piece. So where is my PowerPoint? Share. And let's see, ready for start. Okay, are you seeing just the slide, right? That says improving access to downtown?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so this presentation comes out of a report that we sent to you all a couple of weeks ago, a draft report. Hopefully you've had a chance to look over that. And I'm going to be sort of summarizing it tonight. There are a few changes from the report, mostly kind of simplifying some of the recommendations. And that report obviously we'll kind of we'll finalize that report after tonight. I do ask that you hold your questions and comments until the end, if you don't mind. And let's see. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say. So with that, I will get going. So this was really all about, addressing the congestion and traffic and parking issues in the summer in Falmouth, particularly in the summer, just to accent that. So we wanted to kind of get input from as many people and departments as we could. And this is a list on the left with who we met with, number of town departments, organizations, et cetera. And we also are kind of in the midst of a survey, which has been fairly widely distributed, is still available for people to fill out if they haven't done that yet. The URL is here. We've gotten about 1,100 responses and counting, which is great, and a pretty good representation from different kind of segments of town in terms of business owners, employees, people who live downtown, just general citizens, et cetera. So that is kind of what we've drawn a lot of our information from tonight. So everybody's familiar with this scene in the summer, a lot of congestion downtown, people trying to parallel park with varying degrees of success, causing more backups. And we sort of looked at what are kind of the main drivers of that. And we sort of summed it into three categories, if you will. The first is that the vast majority of people access downtown in private vehicles because the alternatives are inadequate or unknown. And we're calling that connectivity to the rest of the town, really, via non-private cars. Or that means anything other than private cars, not just, not shared cars. Also that we have plenty of pavement already devoted to vehicles, but it's not really very well managed in terms of time limits and other constraints. And there's been inconsistent enforcement. So we're calling that management. And then finally, a lack of information and signage about parking. And that leads to visitors, especially just kind of wandering aimlessly looking for parking, people trying to parallel park rather than, going a block away to try to park more easily in the lots, and large trucks, boat trailers, and so on that have no business on Main Street, but that's where their GPS brings them. And just kind of this is a photo of the Library Lane lot, and there's, not so much as a big peace sign there, even right at the entrance there, much less either on Main Street or Kathy Lee Bates directing you there. So really nothing to clue the visitor in to these options. So the result, we get, again, congestion, we get, frustration, and that's kind of borne out. I will be showing you like little tidbits from the survey with the results so far. What, if anything, do you not like about traveling downtown? Big number one, hard to find parking. Big number two, traffic. Parallel parking, myself and others, that gets cut off a little bit. That's number three. And then just want to point out, not bike friendly is number four. So that, and then another result is that people, particularly residents, avoid downtown in the summer. And that was one of the questions. Do you ever avoid downtown because of a congestion parking situation? 80% said yes. So that's not really, I imagine, as a business owner, what you'd be looking for. That's not the result that we want, is driving people away, keeping people away with these issues. So what do we want instead? What would we like it to look like? We want to encourage the patronage of these downtown businesses and restaurants by making them easy to access. We want to enable residents to be able to conduct their business downtown easily, again, with ease of access. We want overnight parking for people who live there, shift length employee parking, and convenient access for disabled users. So that's kind of what we're going for. Pretty basic, but pretty far from where we are now. So how are we going to do that? Well, we want to improve, if we go back to those three things, the connectivity, the management, the information. Start with connectivity. We want to minimize traffic and parking demand by encouraging access to downtown through alternatives to private vehicles, biking, walking, public transport, rideshare. We really want to focus on getting people downtown, not just accommodating cars once they're there. This is a real shift, and this, relates to what Peter McConerty was just saying with MassDOT, where they're all about moving cars. We really want to be about moving people downtown, preferably not in cars, because then we don't have to worry about where they're going to park. As one survey respondent put it, we don't need more parking downtown, we need fewer cars downtown. In terms of management, we want to maximize the available pavement through partnerships with private entities down there, churches and schools, town entities as well. And we want to manage the parking so that proximity is proportional to the duration of your mission. So if you have a short duration mission, whether you're picking up takeout or running into the bank for 2 seconds, you want to be able to park closer. If you're going to lounge around and spend the day shopping or whatever, maybe you can walk a few more blocks. And also information, ensure that everybody knows exactly where to head to park based, again, on their mission, and that also that only the traffic that needs to be on Main Street is on Main Street. So getting all the trucks, the boats off, but also getting off the people who just want to park themselves for 3 hours. They don't need to be driving down Main Street. So also to ensure that everyone knows of alternative ways of getting there and feels welcome using them. So let's take a look at kind of where we're at now with these three things. So connectivity. So again, just to, you can see my cursor, right? Moving around. Does it show, hopefully? But anyway, we're basically—
We can see it.
Okay, good. Post office, down Main Street to Gifford Street, and then along Kathy Lee Bates. So that's our general, really the core of the village center that we're looking at. So let's start with what does it look like for connectivity for people walking, for pedestrians? Well, the core of downtown is pretty good. The sidewalks are complete. They're in pretty good shape for the most part. But unfortunately, when you get, a block or two off Main Street, things start to deteriorate very rapidly. And this happened to be in one direction, but honestly, I could have taken that picture in pretty much any direction and it would have looked similar. So it's, and the tragedy, I think, of this is that for both this and the bike accommodations, which I'll show in a second, is that, there are thousands of people who live or stay when they're visiting within probably 2 flat miles of downtown. And if these sidewalks, bike paths, et cetera, were good and welcoming and appropriate and felt safe, a lot of those people would be capable of biking or walking downtown. So it just, you look at these sidewalks in this picture, it just doesn't send a message to walkers that, hey, we want you, we're welcoming you, come here and, on your own 2 feet. This is the situation for bikes, which is quite a bit worse. These triangles are bike racks, so that's a handful of bike parking downtown. But other than this multi-use path behind Mullenhall School, which pretty much dumps you out at both ends with no separated bike lanes, there are no bike accommodations downtown, no bike separated bike lanes, no multi-use paths, nothing that would make a family or a non-confident biker feel okay about biking downtown. And as you get away from the downtown, the situation is far worse. Again, Peter McConerty was just talking about the connection to the east along 28/Main Street/ all the other names it has. And right now that's really very unsafe for bikers. And it sounds like it's going to be years before it can be made safe for bikers. But, I'm hoping that in the interim, we can at least do the minimum, whether that's striping it a little wider, the shoulders a little wider and putting up temporary pylons or whatever. Because most bikers who aren't confident bikers don't feel safe unless they are physically separated from cars. Paint on the pavement does not do it. So not only is downtown and to the east not great for bikes, but here we have the Shining Sea Bikeway 2 or 3 blocks away. The Friends of Falmouth Bikeways last August installed a counter on the that would log passerby on the bike path. And between August and November, they logged 128,000 trips. Now, even if you're conservative and you say, well, those are all round trips, cut that in half, that's still, 65,000 people who are potential customers and patrons of downtown businesses and restaurants who either don't even know it's there because of the lack of signage, which I'll get to in a minute, or don't feel safe getting there because there right now is no safe way to get from the bike path to downtown. I mean, we do have this connector that, dumps out across from Kathy Lee Bates, and there's a crosswalk there, but I can tell you from experience, 80% of the people ignore it. They go right through it. And I've never seen any enforcement there. Even if you do manage to risk your life and get across there, you end up on a sidewalk on Kathy Lee Bates that again, no bike accommodations the whole way into town. So that's, I think, a really lost opportunity for getting a huge number of people downtown to eat in our restaurants, shop in our stores, and not need parking, not need any more parking, not cause any more congestion on Main Street. What a great opportunity that could be if we could make Kathy Lee Bates bike friendly. Then kind of moving into the public transport, we've got the Falmouth station right there as well. So in addition to all these bikers, you've got thousands of people coming in by bus every summer. And again, the connection to downtown, I think, is not that well known and physically very difficult and dangerous. So, and then further public transport, we've got the Sea Line year round, which runs about once an hour. And then in the summer, the Whoosh trolley joins it, goes pretty much down Main Street, about every 20 minutes, but the hours are really not conducive to anything but sort of tourist shopping or having lunch out for the day. I think it doesn't start till 10 a.m. and it ends, early after or late afternoon. So you can't really go out to dinner. You can't decide to spend the evening and not have to worry about driving home. So really not super practical. And again, in terms of the message that we're sending, this sign does not say to me, oh, this town really loves public transport and takes it seriously. It's neglected, it's an afterthought, it's, clearly not had any attention for far too long. On the other hand, we do very well by our vehicles. This is the amount of downtown that we've kind of yielded over to cars. This is just what's available to the public, more or less, or that we hope will be. So, and then within, if we zoom out just a little bit, you add Lawrence School, which with the eventual construction of the Shiverix Pond Path will be, it's about a 7-minute walk. I've timed it a couple of times. There's also this Depot Road lot primarily for the bike path, but that's, potential little bit of overflow as well. So, the point being, there's between here and here, there is lots of pavement accessible to people who are shopping or eating downtown. So what does the management look like right now of our parking and traffic? Well, there really isn't much. There's the 3-hour Main Street limit, a few other parking limits like in front of the post office, and enforcement has been contingent on resources, primarily in the police department, and that's been inconsistent and often under resourced, I guess. And so it hasn't been consistent enough that people really worry about it, I guess. So therefore you get people parking on Main Street, you get employees, you get vineyard day trippers, beachgoers, etc. And then at the same time, employees and residents don't necessarily have a dedicated place to park. Information, I've purposely left this side blank because there really is so little. There's, if you Google, if you're a first-time visitor to Falmouth and you Google parking in Falmouth, there's no information available. And there's very little signage, as I pointed out at the beginning, that would lead you as a first-time visitor to any of these other lots. So this is an area that we really could use a big uptick in. So what are we recommending to do about all this? So what I'm mostly going to talk about tonight is what we call kind of the low-hanging fruits, things that we're really hoping can be done by this summer. Like, we can really get going on them pretty quickly and see what a difference it makes over this next season. So the first is to improve connectivity. There are a couple things that would, and these are things, just to be clear, that we're sort of throwing in your lap, I guess, if you will, is that these are things that need to come from you, the select board, as directing various departments or working with various entities to sort of make things actually happen. So one is to direct the DPW to begin designing a signalized ped and bike crossing at that KLB connector. That would provide a safe way across the Route 28, everybody zooming down to the ferry corridor, so that there'd be connection between both the bike path and the Falmouth station to downtown. That would be huge. And there are, we've missed a couple of state grant opportunities because we don't have this designed. We need shovel-ready projects. So if there's any way, we can get this designed so that it's sitting there ready, poised and ready when these other opportunities come up, that would be fabulous. I'll direct the DPW to include separated bike lanes or a multi-use path from that connector to Main Street and any changes to KLB Road. Now, I know there's a sidewalk being planned now that connects the new Shivericks Pond path to the school, but it doesn't include bikes and it doesn't go all the way down to the end, to the bike path end. And I think that's a real lost opportunity. And I think the Bike Ped Committee would love to have input into that, what could work better both for bikes and pedestrians. But that's a key connector. I just can't stress how important that is. And to miss an opportunity and have something go in there now that is going to preclude anything that's more inclusive for bikes as well, I think would be a really it's a missed opportunity if we go through with that. Same again, we just heard more from Peter about phases 1, 2, and 3. Anything we can do right now to make those connections toward the east would be just fantastic. And work with the Bike Ped Committee to increase bike parking downtown. They have access to several different grant programs for bike racks and so on. And to begin discussions with the Regional Transit Authority about expanding the times of service to accommodate employees and dinner patrons so that becomes really a more viable mode for people to get downtown. And just kind of backing up the bike and the public transport things. So 40% of the survey respondents said they would be somewhat or very likely to access downtown by bike if there were separated bike lanes. And that's pretty consistent with surveys that have been done nationwide. About 40% of people say if they're separated, safe feeling bike lanes, I would bike. Even if only half those people really do, well, wouldn't it be great to reduce the number of cars downtown by 20%? 25% would park a 5-minute drive away if there were a free shuttle. So if we had a shuttle from the Falmouth Plaza or the mall or something. The second kind of big thing is to improve parking management. And the first is to designate the nearby lots. Work with the school committee, the churches, and other private entities to formalize the use of those parking lots. Make it very clear who can park there when, what time of year, et cetera. And have signage accordingly and have that on all the information that we provide for parking so that those aren't just, kind of for people who are in the know, but those are part of the parking system for downtown. And then the other thing that really is kind of the crux of our plan is to designate what we're calling parking zones to better manage and improve parking turnover in prime downtown spaces. Again, where the distance is proportional to the duration of your mission. And we're sort of coming from the assumption that prime spots like on Main Street, there should be a lot of turnover there. And this is kind of a thing within parking, management circles. If you have a lot more turnover, you'll have a lot more customers and you have a lot more people who are willing to, as residents if I want to go do takeout, normally in the summer, I'd say, oh, forget it. I can't deal with like having to park and then walk 20 minutes to get my pizza or whatever. But if the, parking on Main Street is shorter and there's a lot of turnover, then I might think, yeah, there's a good chance I'll be able to snag a spot and run in and get my pizza. So I'll go. So it is, good for business, basically. So, here, this is just sort of telling, I think, this is how long does it take you to find parking in the summer? more than 10 minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes, and then less than 5 minutes. But, a significant number between 5 and 10 or even more, or I can never reliably find it. So, for me, I would much rather be walking during that 5 to 10 minutes or more from a slightly off-site lot than circling and tearing my hair out in a car. And other people seem to agree. 74% said they're willing to walk up to 5 minutes to their destination, which totally includes Mullen Hall and the downtown churches. And 50% said they're willing to walk 5 to 10 minutes, which brings in Lawrence School. So these are not, we're not talking about the high school lot and asking people to hike for 3 miles. These are all within, for able-bodied people, a very reasonable distance. So this is kind of the crux of the scheme of what we're looking at. And just to start out by noting that we're only talking about this summer. Evening limits would be different. The evening limits would basically be lifted. It's just still, we'd have to figure out after 2 a.m. or whatever, so there's no overnight parking. And there are no meters, no charging. It's all done by time, basically. So the other than in front of the post office, which would stay 30 minutes, all the on-street parking on Main Street, on Kathy Lee Bates, on Library Lane, that remains as 1 hour. Or that becomes 1 hour, I should say. And then all the downtown lots are 3 hours, and these little symbols mean, so the asterisk means if you have an employee permit, which we would have to issue, you can park there for a shift length. And if you are a downtown resident, we would have to issue those as well. You can park overnight in these lots. So pretty much all the street is 1 hour. All the lots are 3 hours, pretty simple. And this, of course, is assuming we get agreement from this is a big assumption without, presumptuous, I guess, of us to put on here, but with the hope that we can work out agreements with the churches and the banks, et cetera. But certainly, with the school, and that the Lawrence School as kind of an added inducement to walk that 2 or 3 extra minutes would have 6 hour parking. And we purposely chose 6 hours and not longer to hopefully eliminate the temptation for people to park here, walk down, grab the bus and take the ferry to the vineyard for a day or two. So this is really, hey, you want to spend the whole day in Falmouth, but not overnight. So then you'll notice here I had town hall as a mix. So let me get at that a little bit better. So basically I think it's 26 spots right in front of town hall that are there now would remain as 1 hour town hall business. Now, right now, just point of curiosity, that is not posted by there's no time posted, so it's not enforceable. So we would want that posted 1 hour parking for town hall business, and the rest of it becomes like the other downtown lots, 3 hours, and then with space for employees and overnight visitors. Overnight residents. So this scheme obviously relies a lot on enforcement, and so we would hope to have the police chief supportive of that and have you enlist his support. And it's probably going to require hiring additional seasonal parking enforcement personnel, funded hopefully from enforcement revenues, and also to just investigate what additional technology is out there to expedite parking enforcement. We don't really know what that is. We are hoping that someone else can investigate that. Then also to look, down the line at developing incentives for this would be town employees, obviously, to use alternative transport or near some of the nearby lots rather than parking right in town hall lot all the time. To engage the merchants to improve delivery schedules. I didn't get into that too much, but delivery trucks are another kind of issue downtown. can we consolidate those in the early hours? Can we get them off the main street, et cetera? So to kind of start working on that with the merchants. And in the meantime, to send a letter to the business owners with things they can do now by encouraging off-peak delivery, not allowing their employees to park in prime spots, utilizing their private parking behind some of these places. There are lots that are often, half empty. I don't know where those employees are parking. And better signage and adding bicycle racks near their businesses. And finally, to begin actively seeking funding for electric vehicle charging stations, kind of to be spread throughout downtown. This is something that Falmouth is falling way behind on, I have to say. Other than the ones for town vehicles, I think there's one at the harbor, and that is it. And Hyannis, by comparison, I've heard has 30 right in their downtown area. These are now available practically for free through state programs. So that's really something, that is the wave of the future and something that people are really going to be looking for. In terms of information, not sure exactly who this would all be, but the DPW, the sign committee, us, whatever, to develop, what signs do make sense? What can they look like consistently, attractively, and work, so they work for different applications and audiences. Install that signage consistent with the report and the different zones so that it's unambiguous and clear. And same for pedestrians and bikes. There's some, kind of interesting examples out there of, it's a 9-minute walk to lunch, brunch, or treat yourself, things like that. Just make it kind of fun. There are a number of options out there. And finally, I direct the IT department to develop a web page with parking information so that if I'm a first-time visitor to Falmouth and I Google parking in Falmouth, something like this Amherst page comes up where, there's parking maps, permit parking, plate by plate, blah, 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 whatever our particular things are, but that I can look and go, oh, look, I can park, a 7-minute walk away and not even have to deal with Main Street. That's where I'm going to head. That has all the information about hours and what the options are. And also to direct, again, we're not sure who, the appropriate staff to explore and adjust the wayfinding apps used by truckers in particular to make sure that they're not being directed via Main Street to get somewhere else, where they could more easily be on Jones Road or even Kathy Lee Bates or something. And same, is there some way of doing that for harbor boat launch traffic? So again, that is kind of what we are calling the low-hanging fruit. Things that we'll be looking at in the, going forward are some variation of one-way KLB and or Main Street or pedestrian Main Street. There was a huge amount of support for various, variations of these in the comment section of the survey, and I'll be kind of compiling and tabulating those. But a lot of people suggested some version of this. Diagonal parking, because the people just are not good at parallel parking around here, and it really does gum things up. Further connectivity beyond downtown, beyond those immediate vicinities to, combined with safe routes to schools, connection to East Falmouth, connection to destinations like the harbor, the beach, etc. Really making this town, all the great parts of this town accessible for everybody, even if you're not in a car. Parking garage, if that also had a fair number of supporters in the survey, that may be something we hopefully find we don't even need to think about after if this other plan is implemented, but it's something, down the future to think about. smart parking apps and other technology, some zoning changes that kind of need to be updated. And finally, it sounds crazy, but here we have town hall right in the middle. It's hard to get to for people trying to do business there. The number of employees, that takes up a lot of parking spaces downtown, and it's in a flood zone. So kind of with all that together, it may be, I know this isn't the first time you've heard this, but time to start looking at alternate spots for town hall and getting it out of the downtown. So that's all kind of, in the future. But what we'd really like to focus on for now is what I presented tonight. So with that, I will take questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Allison. Any questions from anyone on the board here? I can't see everybody, so if you have a question or a comment.
I can stop sharing.
Yeah, maybe just stop sharing so I can see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any questions from anyone on the board? Yep, Doug Brown.
Pretty familiar with it, as I'm the liaison to the committee, so I don't really have a lot of questions. But when Allison mentioned that there's nothing, when you look up parking, I did find that the Falmouth Police Department has a really good website, and they have a lot of information about parking. So that's
okay. I take that back then. I'm sorry. When I just Googled parking in Falmouth, that did not come up for me.
Okay.
So
maybe we can work on some connectivity with that. Good.
Yeah, the police department and the fire department have been really cutting edge with the social media and websites.
Great.
Sam Patterson? Sam, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I just want to say, yes. I just want to say that I think you've really done a very comprehensive job at taking a look at what our options are. I really appreciate the work that you've done.
Thank you.
Likewise, thank you. Any other questions? Any public comments? I don't see any here. Great. Well, thank you to the committee. It's a lot for us to take a look at and kind of break into some pieces, as you noted, some of those things that are kind of short versus long term, challenges to take a look at and maybe implement. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Obviously was a significant amount of work. Doug Brown, go ahead.
How will we address this? I mean, honestly, I would make a motion that we adopt all these suggestions, but I would certainly expect to give some time for public comment. Will we come back in a couple of weeks and revisit this and consider voting on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the pieces, and Mr. Suso can jump in, but I mean, a lot of the pieces are going to impact and we need input from other entities, right? So if you recall back last summer when we tried to put in solutions for COVID and we spent probably 2 weeks and we took many, I know you went, Doug, I went, Chief Dunn, and at the time, Chief Small and staff, we walked all of Main Street, started mapping out how we were going to have the streets closed off, had the DPW there. And then we had, when we talked about it, tremendous pushback from business owners who said, absolutely not, it's going to kill our business. So I think there are a lot of entities involved in some of these suggestions that we need to push this out to and get feedback from. And I know the committee had spoke to, they gave us kind of that list of resources that they touch base with, but so many of these things touch on a lot of different, we're talking about the schools, private businesses, some of the churches, some of the roads, and some of those suggestions are roads that we don't control 100%. So I think we need to parse through it and look at, maybe we look at 3 of the initiatives and who they touch and getting that feedback.
Well, there's a couple that we could consider right away, which would be like the Catherine Lee Bates, Palmer Avenue crosswalk improvements. That is a dangerous crosswalk. I pull out of Catherine Lee Bates a lot of times because I'm heading to Woods Hole to work. And I really see that a lot of people neglect that crosswalk. I agree with that statement. That's not something that really would have any impact on anybody negatively if we move forward with that right away.
Yeah, I just don't know what the, I don't know that we have, Julian, I don't know that we have full carte blanche to put up the flashing lights and things like that. That's why I'm saying we just don't have all the way in, but maybe Julian, could you speak to that?
Well, that definitely would be the same circumstances we had further north on 28. MassDOT controls that. we can propose a design. At the end of the day, MassDOT weighs in and determines what they do and don't allow. And unfortunately, there's a fairly long time frame, but certainly no problem with exploring that and pursuing it further with MassDOT. But did want to have a caution for folks that it's not a slam dunk and the town does not control that. All we can do is influence it, and we're happy to make every effort to do so.
Yeah. So maybe it makes sense, I just want to be cognizant of the time and what else we have left on the agenda, but maybe it makes sense for us, Julian, if we can facilitate getting this report out to, say the two public safety chiefs, get it to the DPW, get it to maybe the Chamber of Commerce, the schools, things like that, and give a period of time for those groups to kind of weigh in and get some feedback to us so that we can try to make some decisions and set a timeline for them to get back to us with, thoughts that they have, concerns they have, so that we can have that before us. I'm cautious that we don't do what we did last time, which was really expend a lot of time and energy only to have the entities that we thought we were helping basically tell us, you're not helping us and we don't want it. So I think we just need to get a little bit more feedback from some of the folks involved. Does that make sense, Doug?
It does. I just want to make sure we take some sort of action. I mean, a lot of the stuff in the report is suggestions to take initiative and begin the process. And a lot of it isn't actually instructing us to do these things now. It's instructing us to engage.
Nancy?
Well, from the way I saw it, it's kind of instructing the board to direct certain department heads to do certain things. I think it talks about the DPW, so I would want to hear from people. It talks about the police department. I would want to hear from the chief before moving forward. I'd also like to hear from the business owners on Main Street and around Main Street before moving forward. So, and I think the report is incredibly comprehensive, but I think it does need to go out to other people to weigh in on. I think voting on something right now would be premature.
No, I'm not suggesting a vote, just a timeline for.
Mm-hmm. So go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, certainly signs are something that we could start on pretty quickly. And I think those are actually quite attractive and make a lot of sense. So I could see us making some progress that might actually help out this summer.
Mm-hmm. Great point. And we can get, signage is generally something that DPW is very quick and responsive in doing. Yep, Julian?
Yeah, I also wanted to underscore that some of these suggested initiatives are already underway and are works in progress, so that certainly we look forward to continuing to work on those and bring them forward, including a couple things before town meeting in the upcoming April town meeting.
I have a question about the Shivricks Pond path. So, Allison, is that actually the accurate depiction of what the Shivricks Pond path that we've been talking about? Because I thought there was something going on the other side of the pond. Mr. Suso, can you share any information on that?
Well, the public works part of the construction is a sidewalk that connects the school to the opposite side of Shivricks Pond. But my understanding is, as you say, Doug, that it is to loop entirely around the pond and return to Catherine Lee Bates, so it's a full loop.
And I was also hoping that we could maybe come up with a path on the other side of the pond other than what Allison's drawing depicted, because it feels like it's a little quicker walk and you're walking across a nice open field rather than going down that street. So I don't know if there's any plans for that or if the school would approve that, but if we're going to connect to the Lawrence School, it seems like we'd want to be on that other side of the pond and go directly to the parking lot.
So maybe if what we do is push out to those entities that we just talked about, Julian, and we can make sure we have all of them and ask for, a comment within a 2-week period so that we can then have it back on our agenda and we can maybe pick some of those things. If it's signage, if it's particular things that can be done fairly quickly, we then have the weigh-in from some of the, folks it's going to most directly impact before we make our decision, so that it's not something that just gets lost and put on a shelf, but that we actually get some feedback and then this board can make some decisions. Does that make sense to everyone?
Sounds good to me.
Indeed.
Okay, Great.
Thank
you, Allison. Thank you, Ed.
Sorry, if I could just say one more thing. Julian, if you could give me till the end of the week to update the draft report so that it more reflects what I talked about. It's mostly like the zones. We just kind of simplified the zones, the parking zones and stuff, so that before you push it out, let's get a version that we're happier with.
Yep.
If I might, Madam Chair, and to Allison and Ed, just while you're updating that, the parking lot in front of Hanush Jewelers, I think you have portrayed as public. That's a privately owned lot.
Right.
The town has no control over that.
Right.
And also to get it out just officially to the planning board and zoning board, because I know some of the suggestions implicate both those boards as well, sort of their purview. So Julian, if we can make sure that they get copies when Allison is done updating it.
Certainly, I'll await that from Allison, and then we'll transmit that to the entities you indicated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If I can, just the one project that's kind of moving right along that, again, that I talked about quite a bit is that Kathy Lee Bates sidewalk that's in the works, that is not a bike path or multi-use path. I don't know exactly where that is in the design and construction process, but again, I think if there's any way to kind of back off on that and get more input from the bike ped committee and our committee to make that more bike friendly from that new hopeful crosswalk to the school, that would be terrific.
Okay, Julian?
And
I do want to move on to, because we have a, go ahead.
Construction on that has been delayed for a couple of years, and frankly, it's imminent. The schools have been awaiting it. Town meeting through CPC funding has helped support it with funding, and we have delayed it on multiple occasions. So unless we want to bring everything to a halt, that is planned to be occurring very quickly as proposed and discussed for the last couple of years with a number of entities.
Well, it's unfortunate that there wasn't public input earlier in the process or from the committees that were most concerned with that. But
well, you can talk to Paul Dreyer. Paul has been a champion for that for multiple years and has gone to the planning board. I know he's gone to multiple committees as well. He's gone to the town meeting. He's gone to the CPC. And a tip of the hat to Paul. He conceived it and to the best of my knowledge has been working with many entities about that entire package, including this specific sidewalk and the connection to the schools. So that's my impression.
He was really just involved in the Shiverix Pond path and specifically said he wasn't involved in the KLD part. But anyway, it's
great. All right, thank you. And so we'll get that stuff out and get the comment period back so that we can take a look at the specific suggestions. Great.
Thanks for the very professional report. Very well done.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have our Charter Review Committee interim final report. This is the committee that your tasks never end, Peter. So welcome. Go right ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm Peter Clark. I'm chair of the Charter Review Committee. Thank you for having us, and thank you for working with us so well over the months that we've been at this. I would like to have the first slide up if I can. I'm going to run a slide PowerPoint for you. And I would like to start. We're gotten ahead of ourselves, but the committee members, the 6 fellow committee members, were stalwart, have been very thoughtful, and I hope that our suggestions will be constructive for you. With slide 2, we can take a look at why we're an interim final report. And I thank you very much. Our major work is done. We've looked at a lot of ideas. We have undertaken the amending of charter language, and this report has in it 5 position statements that carry other suggestions for the town improvement of the effectiveness of town government. There are some loose ends. We're going to meet a few more times to make recommendations to the select board for the 2021 November warrant. But basically, this is our report. We'll tie it up at the very end. We hope our ideas, the recommendations there in that second part of the slide are constructive. We want to stress that we feel that we're trying to capture some important improvements, some important steps that this select board has taken, as much as just kind of looking at correcting weaknesses. We feel that we are looking at the challenges of new complex issues for the town, not just looking at problematic past practices. So we want this to be constructive. The ideas that we're going to be talking about will certainly take some thought and processing. Next slide, please. We finish with great respect and appreciation. The staff and the volunteers on the various committees, the citizen volunteers have been wonderful. We have great appreciation for the assistance to our work by Frank Duffy, Michael Palmer. The select board has given us really meaningful responses. Many town officials and governmental bodies have given us their ideas, and citizens participated through forums and surveys and direct contact with us. So it's been interactive and I think valuable, very valuable for us. Next slide, please. We started in 2018 as the charter requires a charter review committee every 7 years. We're the fourth in the history of this charter, which was passed in 1991. And looking at that last bullet, I want to stress that our task is to assess the existing form of government. It's a whole different process to recommend a different form. That is not in our game plan to make a recommendation of that sort. We are also not evaluating people. That belongs in another system. We're looking at the existing form, its pieces, their relationships. Okay, next slide, please. This is just a quick overview. I can come back and answer questions about the schedule, but we have probably been operating twice as long as most charter review committees, and that's primarily for two reasons. In approaching the November 2019 town warrant, the select board asked us to divide our recommendations. So we were holding some for 2020. Getting ready for 2020 put us right in the path of the COVID epidemic, which stopped work and made it remote. And also because of it, the select board again wanted to keep the November 2020 warrant small, so asked us to split off some to 2021. So unlike most charter review committees, our recommendations for charter amendments have spread over 3 years. And we will have some coming up for 2021. Next slide, please. The work process was really to collect ideas and organize them and decide which needed certain kinds of action. As you can see in the top of this slide, there are basically three kinds of levels of action. One are the charter changes where the language needed to be amended, and we brought those recommendations, and we'll bring some further ones to the select board to go to town meeting. Approved by town meeting, they go on to the town ballot and have to be voted by the town ballot. So major task number one were those amendments, but task number two is related to policies and procedures that don't require charter action. Past charter review committees have made those recommendations, and we are making some also. We also kind of gathered these ideas under these 6 topics that you can see, the substantive topics. And that just helped us think about them and see the relationships. And you'll see those topics reappearing in the amendments and in our other suggestions. Next slide, please. So the first major set of products were the amendments, and there were 11 warrant articles for November 2019. 10 of those 11 passed town meeting vote and were passed on the ballot in 2020. 5 were passed on the blanket at our January holding of the November meeting, and so they await being on the ballot this coming May. And there are 6 drafted for 2021, but they may be reworked, and we'll bring those to the select board at the appropriate time. You've seen those, we've talked about them, and I won't spend time with them now unless you want to go back and ask questions about them. But the other second major part of our work are these position statements that we've crafted. And I'd like to spend a couple of minutes on each of them, and then we can go back and look at them, or they can undergo further study. The first of those relates to the executive branch. It's in pages 8 through 11 of the formal report. And the focus of this is that the charter clearly makes the select board the chief executive goal setting, policy making part of the executive branch. And it's a huge responsibility. And as you well know, it takes lots of time, and it's getting more complicated, both with federal regulations and with the complexity of energy issues and climate issues and those kinds of things. So we had 4 suggestions or sets of suggestions that we're putting forward relative to this select board focus on planning and policy. The first has to do with aligning the planning and adherence, getting adherence to those plans. And there is a suggestion that's in the charter language that you should set procedures to assure consistency and adherence. And so there's a statement here about moving forward on that to get those in place for the operation of governmental bodies and departments. The select board agenda focus on issues has to do with the fact that we're making suggestions that policy and planning are vital, as you know, and we suggest about 8 areas that you might look at to try to delegate things away from your agenda. They don't take lots of time right now, but they are there on the agenda. The hope is that the select board can get itself time so that it's not spending 4-hour meetings to really look at the goal setting and policy issues. Under select board meeting operations, what we're really talking about is something that may be happening that we don't see, but trying to streamline recommendations with staff study and development of options for the board, so the board isn't trying to put those options and sort those options entirely. It should not, of course, undermine deliberation and public discussion, but we hope there can be some streamlining there. The last issue, accessibility of board policies, is more a technical issue. We had trouble finding policies and tracking policies. The bylaws are well coded, and we think that the policies might be also. Thank you. That's that quick overview on that position paper. So the next slide looks at the second position statement, which relates to the management of governmental bodies. Now, again, the term governmental body here means any multi-member body, committees, boards, authorities, commissions. They've got lots of names. But if they're a multi-member body that's doing work for the town, they're called a governmental body in the charter. There are about 50, more than 50 such entities in town. All but 2 of them are in the executive branch. The Finance Committee and the Rules and Procedures Committee are part of town meeting, the legislative branch, but most of them are in the executive branch. Of those, there are 5 that are elected, you and 4 others, and they're set, usually authorized or mandated by state law. And there are 8 that are appointed and meet 2 criteria that are now in the charter, basically saying that they also are authorized or mandated by state law and have some form of authority outside the select board. But the vast number, 35 approximately, of these governmental bodies are advisory to the select board. There's no action by them unless it comes through the select board or through a department, a staff member who is not supervised by that committee, but supervised by the town manager. So these are advisory boards that serve the town in very valuable ways. And probably there are 400 seats that you fill. I haven't done the count, but something like 400 seats that are filled. It's a hugely important part of town government. And you, this select board, worked hard to liaise with them, had potlucks and tried to bring people together in very important ways. But our suggestion here under oversight is that there should be one person in the staff with help, but one person who is delegated to really assist all of these processes. We, under 8 suggested areas of attention, have listed some specific things that we think could be improved with that attention. And of course, Falmouth has great models for this kind of thing, whether it's the school VIPS program or the hospital or the road race or you name it. There are organizations that really have invested some resources to be sure that volunteers are satisfied in the work they do and that the committees they're on are producing effectively. We're not questioning the work and the value of these committees at all, but we're saying these people are working hard for the town, and we think the town needs to put some attention, concerted, organized attention. There are people in town hall who are working to try to make this happen, but and the committee handbook, for instance, is a big step forward. But I think the organization of it needs to have a look. So to move to our next position statement, focusing on personnel management, it's pages 12 to 14 of your formal report. Falmouth has a very large, diverse, and capable staff. It's a big town in its operations. And the CRC worked to try to clarify in the charter or elsewhere how to provide the manager, town manager, and select board the tools to be agile and adaptable and flexible in handling staff to meet the demands on the town. But we couldn't make much headway, partly because there are very strong inconsistencies between the old bylaw before the charter and what the charter says. And the charter in Article 5, Section 5B lists about 10 areas for personnel regulations to be developed. And some have, we can't find others. So, and that may relate to how policies are organized, but there needs to be work. And I know that the select board has highlighted this, and we credit you for having called attention to the need to work on this. And we're really reinforcing that as something important in operating a town this size. The last 2 items, town organizational chart and evaluation processes, are less major, but they're important to making sure that the public can understand the organization and how governmental bodies relate to departments and things of that sort. I can answer questions about that. We'll move to the next position report, which is the 4th of the 5. And this is the one that deals with the legislative branch. Falmouth has had a representative town meeting for over 60 years. When it was first allowed by state legislature, Falmouth was one of the first, I think, to start it. The legislative branch, the town meeting, is facing some of the same pressures the executive branch is, in the sense that a lot of our issues are becoming more complex and more challenging. It also faces what the select board faces and all of our levels of government, right up to the national level, in terms of the norms of political discourse, shall I say politely. You know, it's harder and harder to grapple with issues. We respect the town meeting. We respect the moderator. The state law gives the moderator major responsibility for handling the way town meeting operates. But there is also a Rules and Procedures Committee, and we are suggesting that systematic and predictable collaboration on 8 issues at least, and some of those at least, and maybe others, is an important challenge to the continued respect for the work that the town meeting does. Our final position statement is on the assessment of government effectiveness. And again, we credit the select board with having written into the strategic plan 2 years ago, I think it was, and continuing a direct goal about evaluating the effectiveness of the organization. We urge you to follow through further with that, but really are looking at suggesting that there be a proactive, broad-based, kind of standards-based effort to monitor the effectiveness of how various issues are worked through both the executive and the legislative branches. So thank you for putting it into the strategic plan. We have suggested in that complexity of town challenges about 9 areas that are now or will be, we think, requiring significant energy and effort by both the executive and legislative branches. This is not a recommendation to change the form of government. This is a recommendation to monitor how this form is doing as we are faced with tackling energy and climate and other significant and complex issues. So that is a quick overview. The last slide just mentions a couple of smaller byproducts of our work. Back at the beginning, I mentioned there were 3 categories: those that required charter amendment, those that were suggestions on policy and procedure, and those that didn't get any attention. So Appendix 8 has a list of 14 topics that we considered and did not act on, and it gives the reasons, and we hope that'll be helpful to the future Charter Review Committee. Also, in getting into the weeds of the charter language, we found inconsistencies in terms of grammar and editing. So we set about to try to make that uniform, very carefully working with the town clerk, Mr. Palmer, and the town council, Mr. Duffy, to make sure that none of our suggestions were substantive charter changes, but just the tiny nuts and bolts, the dotted i's and crossed t's. So that has been done, or will actually be done, and moved to the town clerk, and those changes will be made in the charter. And we've used a set of rules, and so they're an appendix for a future charter review committee. So that's a quick rundown of what's in that interim final report. I know you have a full agenda, and I've certainly open for questions and further discussion on any of this.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you, Peter. Let me just go ahead, Doug Jones. I saw your hand up first, and then I think I see Sam.
Very quick question. When would you think that if 2022 is when the final report's done, when does the 7 years start again?
I think officially that's a good question. It says every 7 years, and we started in 2018, so that would be 2025. But I think it's up to the select board to say, well, they finished in 22, so it's 29 instead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else from the board? I mean, this is really just such a thorough review, and it's interesting because I think certain periods of review really move us forward. And it felt like, even though, we're not talking about decades, some of these changes really felt so long overdue, that it just feels like a different process in many ways. So we know you guys really just went top to bottom, and didn't leave out, some of those things with Scrivener's errors, or, the pronouns, things like that really do matter. So, it definitely changes what our charter, how it really impacts and interacts with folks. So, Doug Brown?
Really appreciate the overview of how the functionality of it, rather than just the language in the charter.
Yes.
Because it's so important that, our government is a volunteer group of people, and we have to coordinate the professional staff with the group of volunteers, and we're kind of in the middle between that, and we have to make sure that it works, or else our government doesn't work. So your critical evaluation is very important. So thank you.
You're welcome, Doug.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Peter? We obviously, as we kind of take a further look at it, if folks have questions, just reach out to Peter individually, and then we can kind of synthesize all of it to get back to the board. But so we don't violate any open meeting law, we can pass those on individually. And then if there are things we need to kind of come back as a group on, we will. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The report hasn't been put on the website or made public in any other way, so I assume now that it's been presented to you, it can go.
Yes. Yes, so that the public can take a look at it and also communicate concerns or thoughts to us as well. So Julian, we can make sure that can take place now.
Well, I can post it on the.
Okay, on yours.
Or if there's another place to put it, I'm happy to have it wherever you want it.
Yep, okay. That probably makes sense
So
there.
tell me. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the committee.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, next we are going to bring on Paul Muskowski and Maggie Clayton, and they are going to give us an update on the beaches and where we stand in preparations for the upcoming season. Welcome, Maggie. Nice to see you. And I think Paul is here. We'll also touch base briefly on the issue. We got some feedback from town council about the issue of changing the membership of the committee as well, which is something we had talked about at the last meeting. So why don't I start? Maggie, do you want to kind of start with sort of the logistics about where things are at preparing for the season and what we need to know and do?
Sure. So the beach department is in full swing in terms of identifying returning staff and the number of vacancies we have. Seasonal job postings went up about 2 weeks ago on the website, and a notify me was sent out. Those positions will also be advertised in the enterprise starting this week. The department has identified certain projects to be done for pre-season work in conjunction with the Department of Public Works and Conservation to approve fencing updates. So those are already happening, scheduled moving forward with permits with the Megansett fence that has broken down and is causing sand erosion into the parking lot, as well as the wooden fence at what we call the bottom of the chute in the old Silver public lot, top lot, where the marsh is growing over, and it's so just to make sure that there isn't anything awry near parked vehicles there, as well as work on the Bristol fence. For those who have been driving on the beach road, there was some vehicles that impacted certain posts this off season, so those will be replaced prior to opening, as well as a site visit to Minot West, the area specifically closest to Foster Road, where erosion has further uncovered old foundation and hazards to public safety. So now that we're into March and we're 2 weeks from spring, and we can feel more confident that another storm won't take out our fixes, we will be moving forward with that. Our sticker sales are underway. We switched to an online system this year, which went out in a notification with resident and taxpayer bills for Q3, Q4. And as of end of business day today, we had sold 2,240 resident taxpayer beach parking permits. And that's being processed by one of my staff members, as well as the tax collector's office at Town Hall. I think that's most of what I have to report. We are getting signage tomorrow from IFAW to notify people about what they should do if they see a seal on the beach. So once I have those in hand, those will get put up at each of our ocean facing sites.
Great. And Maggie, can you I know we've already gotten some emails about sort of parking lot, and obviously that's a decision that this board makes in conjunction with discussions with you, DPW, Beach Committee. But are you in your field hearing any guidance about sort of parking lot usage and what other communities are planning for the upcoming season, if they're planning any type of restrictions at all?
The beach managers on Cape have a managers meeting all together next month in April, where we will hear from all parties their plans. Usually prior to that meeting, the email chain starts to make sure certain items are on the agenda, or for different staff to share their plans moving forward. I've already been in discussion with the town manager's office as well about the timeline for us to make that decision, and we will be sure to let the public know on the website when the decision is finalized, so that information can be pushed out to everybody efficiently.
Great. So we'll touch base again after that and have some conversations. That's great. Any questions for Maggie? Yes, Doug Brown.
Maggie, can you share what a plan is for protecting the old bridge at Minot? Because it just looks like it's such a dangerous situation this year.
Yes, so there will definitely be wrapped snow fencing at the end of the pier that has been in existence before. Obviously, that platform is a lot larger now than it was in spring of 2020 with the area that has been uncovered. But I'm myself, Jim Grady, and Peter McConerty, and probably Jim McLaughlin will all be working on the plan to make sure that it is cleared safely when the use starts to tick up with the warmer weather.
Did they give any clues about what the plan, or are they still developing the plan? Because I was wondering if they're going to maybe cut that rebar and remove it. There's such a huge cage, and it's such a draw for kids to climb under there.
Yeah, they're still developing the plan. I'm sure it's about making the choice that can be the most swiftly implemented, and also deal with the problems. So we don't want to get, I don't want to promise something that I don't know if it can happen.
Right.
But the plan is for that work to be done no later than beginning of April is the hope, beginning middle April, when more staff comes on, because beach maintenance laborers will begin their work, because we don't want to take away from the DPW work and the highway division and all of the other projects that we've heard that they really need to be doing.
Understood, but it just, in the years past, we've been putting the snow fence around it and signaling it and saying stay out, but now it just seems so much worse. I almost feel like we should have a dump truck go out and dump a bunch of sand on and bury that.
So we are going to be receiving dredge spoils, and I'm talking to conservation about where that's going to go. There is a question about burying that problem, which we will then have to fix at a later time, versus placing the sand somewhere else. And we will head on this problem in the next couple of months.
Right. Well, if that's an option, it might be a good one, because at least that would put it out of sight and out of mind for the kids to stay out of there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Any other questions for Maggie? Paul, did you want, we're going to talk about sort of the issue. Basically, I'll summarize, and, the membership issue. I think, our advice from town council was that because of the proposed change for the charter, that it seemed like that was something that should take place once that's voted on. But it seems to be a bit of a gray issue where it's also it's a committee that's under the appointing powers of the board, and that may be within our purview to be able to change those numbers. Doug Jones, go ahead. You're just muted.
We consider at least appointing 2 alternate members in the interim, and then after the charter gets hopefully passed by the town vote, we could then move them up to full members if we wanted to make it a 7-member committee. But if those 2 alternate members were appointed, they could still do some work, even if they wouldn't be allowed to vote, but it'd be certainly easier to get them engaged in the work that the committee needs to do.
Good idea.
Okay.
And it would just involve posting the position 2 weeks, sometime this week, and say we're accepting applications over the next week or 2. And then I'm sure that there's some people who would be interested in filling those positions.
Okay.
Do we need a vote to create alternate positions, or do we already have that capacity?
You would have to have a vote. Nancy, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just thinking, would that sort of be a step in the right direction, Paul, between now and May?
You're muted, Paul.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Very often. I think sometimes when you have somebody that's on a committee and they don't really have, they may have a standing, but they don't have a standing, like how committed are they to a given group? And that right now we have so many outside groups that want to work with the beaches, and we only have X amount of members of this committee of ours, and I think we have more outside groups than we do committee members, and I just wonder if they're sort of, let's call it part-time. It's like being a full board member or an advisor, and I don't know if you get that same kind of commitment out of a person if they're not totally vested, is my feeling, because I used to do this thing with Mass Hort, and I was an advisor, and then I turned into a board member, and I started to really get to work. And that's the only thing that concerns me. But I think you have some constraints. But as Megan said, it's a gray area, and I'd love to see you just make a decision and let's get these people on and get working, if you would, please. And I do appreciate all you taking time for this, because I think it's kind of important.
I think
Thanks.
Doug's idea of an alternate may be a good one. I was going to suggest that we create the 2 new positions contingent on voter approval in May. And then maybe we could even do the interviews and get them ready to go should the voters approve it, if that's within the bounds of the law.
Okay. Nancy?
Could you speak a little bit more, Megan, to the gray area? I mean, is there a way to exploit that? I'm just saying that I think the recommendation or the weigh-in that we got from Frank was that now with the changes to the charter to the charter, that he felt like it was a vote that still needed to happen, because the beach committee is sort of designated. It's one of those groups that's kind of specifically noted within the charter, but that we were, it was still at the end of the day, a committee that this board appoints individuals to. So, I think that there wasn't like a hard and fast, you absolutely can't do this, or no problem at all. It's a no-brainer, go ahead. It was kind of in between, because we're in that charter review year, and town meeting has voted those charter
amendments, but it hasn't been voted on yet by the town. And so I think that's what his point was. So if we're thinking about the fact that we want some people to get up to speed before summer really hits, I mean, we can either do it very cleanly and wait until the vote in May, or we could probably do what Doug Jones was suggesting, and have alternates that are then, I mean, those individuals, if they were appointed now, could then reapply as soon as that vote is done. And they would kind of hopefully go in with that understanding, which speaks to Paul's concern about getting folks that are just sort of like, they don't feel like they're vested. And it would only be a couple of months, hopefully, where they're in that limbo, but they could be learning, getting up to, I mean, there's a lot to get up to speed on. So that would just be my thought, but go ahead, Doug Brown.
Just curious, is there really a difference though between creating the alternate positions and the full-time positions? Because both of them are a change, right?
The charter doesn't say anything about alternate positions. The charter says that the board would be a 5-member beach committee, and we can't change the number of members on the committee under the current charter. But the charter review has made the recommendations. It was passed a town meeting, likely to be passed by town, but we can't change that committee from a 5-member to 7-member until the charter gets changed. But there's nothing saying we can't have 25 alternates. We can do anything we want with alternates.
So if we did the alternates now and then wait for the election, and we can always take another vote to create two new permanent positions.
Exactly. And you'd already have 2 folks who presumably would be strong candidates, and maybe you'd have others that would come forward, but you'd have 2 people who at least were not just getting started in May, because obviously a lot of work has to get done in advance of then. So I like Doug.
They just couldn't vote. They would still be members of the committee, but non-voting members.
Until May.
Right.
But they could have every task that the committee want, however you break up your tasks, they would still be able to take those tasks on. Sam?
And if someone were absent, they could vote.
Yes.
I second Doug Jones's motion.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Thank you, everybody.
All those in favor of creating 2 alternate positions for the beach committee by roll call: Brown?
Brown, aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye. And the idea would be to post it this week with the applications coming in as soon as possible.
Okay. Taylor?
Taylor, aye.
Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Great, thank you. Thanks for bringing that issue, and
Thank
we'll
you, everybody.
deal with that.
Thank you.
Mr. Suso, you'll get that, have Diane publish that.
Definitely,
Great.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you,
Maggie.
Maggie.
Thank you, Paul, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Veterans Council Committee, vote and discuss update to charge and vote to affirm appointment of Joe Q Veterans Coffee Break Incorporated Representative Carissa April. So I see Carissa coming on. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, and do we have anyone else who's coming on to present for this?
Presentation tonight. I think it's just unless from the Veterans Council that I'm unaware of.
I don't see. Do you know, Mr. Suso, if we were going to have anyone?
I was anticipating someone from the Joe Q Coffee Break, perhaps Alan Wilson, but I did not receive a confirmation.
Okay, well, we have Carissa April with us here, so let's move forward with that. And do you want to just tell us a little bit, Carissa, about yourself and just what you bring, the work you've been doing?
Sure, thanks. I've been in Falmouth for over 20 years, and I was stationed here in the Coast Guard initially is what brought me to Falmouth, to Woods Hole. And I served 23 years in Coast Guard and retired here to Falmouth, married a local Falmouth guy, Ron April, and our kids were born here and are in schools here. I'm working with a couple of groups, including the Joe Q Veteran Coffee Break organization. I'm serving as the vice president on that board now, and a couple of other volunteer activities here in town.
Great. Any questions for Carissa?
I would move to affirm the appointment of Carissa April to the Veterans Council Committee.
Patterson, second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. Seeing no further discussion, by roll call, please. Brown,
Brown, aye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, I.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Great. Thank you very much. Oh,
Thank
Mr.
you for your
Suso.
service.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
thank you.
my understanding also was that the board was requested to consider substituting the position that had been filled by the American Legion post in Sandwich in the past, since they do not have a representative, and you substitute for that position that of the Joe Q coffee break going forward. I believe that would require a separate vote if that's a desire of the board.
I guess technically that should have been done first, but as long as we
Ideally.
do both.
Right.
Okay, that's great. And we have a, just want to have the correct, do we have the language here?
Well, it's just to,
I guess it's so, this is the motion that I need, that the board amend its policy and add Joe Q Veteran Coffee Break Incorporated as a representative veterans organization. And we've already appointed a member of that organization, but let's do the other part. So that's the motion, if someone will make it theirs.
And replace the American Legion.
Correct.
With Joe Q coffee break. So moved.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, by roll call. Brown,
Brown, aye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, I.
Patterson.
Patterson, aye.
Great, thank you. Thank you again, Carissa.
Thanks, Carissa.
Okay. My computer just keeps shutting on and off for some reason, my other computer that I'm looking at. So if we can move to our next item on the agenda, let me just move forward here.
Health Advisory Committee.
Yes, if we can have, yep, a report there. Thank you.
Yep.
Do we have, oh, there we go. Welcome.
So do we have to update the charge first, or does it matter?
Yes, you should.
I believe that that's the first step. Yes.
I would move that we replace the Finance Committee member with an at-large member for the Golf Advisory Committee to adhere to the rules that Finance Committee members cannot be on more than one committee.
Correct.
Patterson, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion for that? Seeing none, by roll call, please. Brown,
Brown, aye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, I.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Arthur. We have your application in front of us. This is a term for the Gulf Advisory Committee that ends 6/30/2023. And are there any questions from the board for Mr. Arthur? I know we have all of his information in front of us. Seems very experienced.
Qualified.
Yep.
Would you like to tell us anything about yourself and your interest in the Golf Advisory Committee?
I'm sure, as you can see from my resume, of course, I have a lot of experience in the golf industry, born and raised here in Falmouth, looking for opportunities to give back to the community and get involved in public leadership, I guess. Golf committee seemed like a good point of entry.
Great.
Sounds reasonable.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I move approval. Appointment to the board.
Second.
Committee, I should say, excuse me.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, by roll call. Brown,
Aye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, I.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
time.
Brian.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye. Next, we are going to vote the April 2021 town meeting warrant article recommendations. So let me just go through here. And Mr. Suso, is there anything in particular that we need to do? Or anything that stands out as something that we should take a look at first before we go through them?
Well, Articles 17, 23, and, pardon me, Madam Chair, I think it's
29. Mhm.
29 are the three key ones. Some of the other ones that the board looked at. The Finance Committee, of course, has a primary recommendation that includes Article 33, that was that task force creation. It has a funding component like we talked about the last time. So I
Okay,
think those are the big three for the board to consider, if that be your desire to do so.
great. Thank you. So let's start with Article 17, okay, to see if the town will vote to adopt a bylaw and amend the Code of Falmouth by adding Article 7, Chapter 65, Section 16, promulgation of regulations as follows. I'm not going to read through it, but this is, we can see the proposed language, and the explanation is here that a recent charter change clarified the authority of the select board to adopt rules and regulations on matters within the board's jurisdiction. This article establishes a procedure to be followed by the board when reviewing and adopting such rules and regulations. So I'll just open any discussion on this particular article from the board.
I'm okay with going with the recommendation as it has been put before us.
As printed
Well, no, it's gonna be as edited.
and edited. Patterson second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, by roll call, please. Brown,
Brown eye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, I.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Thank you. Article 23, to see if the town will vote to accept the doings of the select board in the laying out of Winthrop Drive. And so this is an explanation, is a section of Winthrop Drive that is next to a list of private ways, on the list of private ways for which the town has received a completed application for acceptance as a public way. The estimated cost to pave this dirt roadway and bring it up to town standards is $265,000, which represents a cost of approximately $15,600 per abutter. Pretty straightforward. We've done this a number of times.
And that's a maximum amount. It can be less.
Yes, correct.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Does this have any impact on the public beach at Seacoast? This is a different street. That was Bayside Road, I believe, right?
Bayside.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no implication to that.
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, thank you.
Nope. Okay, what's the pleasure of this board?
Move Article 23 as printed.
Okay.
Patterson second. Go ahead,
Okay.
Nancy, you could take it.
I have a motion and a couple seconds. All those in favor by roll call. Brown,
Brown eye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, I.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, I thank you. Okay, Article 29, to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 90, Section 18B, allowing the Board of Selectmen or Traffic Advisory Committee in the interest of public safety to establish designated safety zones at or near any town, at or near any way in town which is not a state highway as a safety zone posted as having a speed limit of 20 miles per hour. And this is on petition of the Quistit Association. Explanation would authorize the board to establish these safety zones with a speed limit of 20 miles per hour. And just a clarification, the statute does not allow for a traffic advisory committee to establish a safety zone. So that would be different than what's in the, what was originally recommended.
Would that mean if our recommendation would be to leave out the traffic advisory committee if we were in support of this article?
Looks like Peter is going to weigh in. Welcome, Peter.
Good evening. So it is a petition article. So I don't know that the board necessarily needs to change the article on advice of town council. If this article is approved as written, it will authorize the select board to adopt safety zones, but not the traffic advisory committee. So this explanation that the chair just read will be printed in the handbook and can be clarified perhaps at town meeting, but I don't know that it's necessary to amend the article itself.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Doug?
Yeah, I still think it probably would be cleaner, instead of recommending it as printed, to recommend it without the traffic advisory committee in it, because the statute does not allow them to do it.
Are we allowed to change the petitioner's article like that?
Yes, you can. It would be an amendment.
Okay.
It would have to be. Yeah, I believe it would have to be an amendment, not the original article that's put before town meeting.
So we would recommend an amendment. to this petitioner's article. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
Yes. He can recommend it be approved with the condition that it be amended.
Taylor, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Did I have a motion?
Sure.
Okay,
Oh,
I
I'm
had a
sorry,
second.
I heard
No,
one.
it's okay. Things were cutting out, so I thought the same thing too. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to clarify that so the recommendation can have an amendment in it. I mean, if a recommendation can be as printed, the recommendation can also be not as printed, but in this way instead.
As amended.
Otherwise, why would we say as printed?
That was my thinking.
I honestly, I'm not sure. I don't recall that being done with a petition article, but it may well be that you're correct, Mr. Jones.
So why don't we vote it that way? Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one more thing. So the legal effect of this article is acceptance of state statute. So that's the reason that it, again, you certainly can make a recommendation or an amendment to the article that's different from the way it is printed. But the reason that town council is confident of the legal impact of it is because it's not a bylaw that we're adopting. So these words are not going to appear in any bylaw. What's going to appear is simply that the town adopted section 18B of chapter 90.
Oh, that's my motion.
Okay. Excellent. And I had a second. So any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor, Brown?
Brown, aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye.
Taylor?
Taylor, aye.
Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Thank you. Okay. And is it this board's pleasure, we had talked about last time, not to do anything with the other article because it is really about expenditures and that really should be the finance committee's domain?
But 30 and 31 we should talk about, right?
Yeah. Those are select board recommendations.
29 through 32 is for the board to determine what your preferences are. And 33.
I guess I just don't, okay, I just don't have
Income
any,
primary.
mine's just stops at 29, so.
Might be on the back page. That might be.
Yeah, it's on the list. The number 30 is petition, change the Christopher Columbus
Christopher
Day.
Columbus, yep.
Indigenous Peoples Day.
Okay. What are folks' thoughts on this? I guess, let me just say in general, there's been a lot of conversation about just how large this warrant is, given that we are going to be doing virtual. Then there was some discussion about folks being, wanting to try and do something in person, but maybe outside at a later date because they felt that the virtual wasn't a good stand-in. So I just want that to, I know there was a series of, and some of you were probably copied and some not. It was actually town meeting members having conversations about the issues, that this is just a really large warrant. So that's just my input.
Yeah, I think the sentiment I read in the chain was either slim it down if it's going to be a Zoom meeting or postpone it until it's safe to have a public meeting at either the high school or on the ball field or somewhere. But I don't know. Yep. I'm anxious to get back to doing full business as usual as soon as possible.
So any thoughts on this, on Article 30?
I found compelling arguments on both sides, and it's a classic case of pick your news. I mean, the people from the Italian American Association seem to give a great history of Christopher Columbus, being an adoptive parent of an indigenous child. And then on the other side, people give this very clear history of him being a slave trader. And I don't even know what to believe. I'm gonna have to do some research myself. It's an interesting question.
I mean, I'll just say that I thought that this, particularly where we live and the region that we live in, and the fact that this is, just has such a rich history of, indigenous folks living, the Wampanoags living. This is, they're ancestral land, and they're still a huge part of our community. So, I know Plymouth has kind of, because they're situated in a similar way, has really addressed this, and so have some other communities. I wasn't as compelled with some of the thoughts shared from that particular Italian American group that shared with us, because I did find it a little bit slanted. I mean, we just do know that, folks who came over from Europe were not like bringing blessings and, in general, didn't better the lives of the indigenous folks that they interacted with. So I did feel that it was, and I understand, I get it. I understand the pride and the fact that, Columbus Day kind of came out of other really unfortunate and terrible issues of anti-Italian sentiment. So, in that sense, I understood what they were saying, but I did find that our presentation was compelling. It's not the only community that's done it, but,
I always
it's
hope the board would
not
support
simple.
this article, and I hope there could be a time for a healthy and pleasant debate among town meeting members.
Yeah.
And are you saying, do I read that to feel that this next town meeting may not be the healthy time to have that debate, or?
I don't think there's any way we can avoid,
Right.
there's
It's
nothing we
here.
can do to control that.
Right. Sam, I'm sorry. I thought were you going to comment?
Well, no, I'm in support of it personally, but it's one of those issues where it kind of depends on your background. But I thought your comments were actually to my points, that this is the Wampanoag land, and I think we don't have an obvious way to recognize that. Honestly, they were quite helpful to us European settlers when we arrived here. So I think it's important that we find a way to recognize those contributions and their continued contributions.
Thank you. Is that a motion for the article, or I don't want to push
Sure.
anybody, but I'm just asking, I just want to move us along if.
Well, then I would move that we recommend Article 30 as petitioned.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Taylor will second.
Okay. Any further discussion? By roll call, Brown,
Brown eye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, aye.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. And I did reach out to that Italian American group. I am going to provide them. They do want to have some representation and make some kind of presentation if town meeting so elects to give them. I don't know if they have members in Falmouth that can speak to it, but I will share that information so they can present their side.
I suggested that they send their information in writing to town meeting members, and I instructed them that the town meeting member email list is available on the town website.
Great. So they'll have every opportunity to present their concerns.
Right.
Okay, next we have, excuse me, Article 31, which is a petition to create a domestic partnership bylaw for the town of Falmouth. This is the one that we heard about from Ron Zweig, and we received some additional information from him. And some examples of other communities that had this in place.
Megan, what's the effect if the town has a bylaw recognizing it, but the state doesn't?
I think it's only going to be relevant within the community that that bylaw is established. I didn't quite understand. I know he had his examples, things like being able to get like healthcare information and things like that.
Take a child out of school, visitation in a hospital.
Make decisions.
So there are some legal implications. But when Ron first asked me about it, I said, well, why not just get married if that's what you want, those protections. But so I don't know. I think marriage is always under assault. You want all the benefits without the legal commitment.
I just didn't quite, and maybe I just haven't understood it enough, but I just thought there were lots of other legal mechanisms to do those things, like a healthcare proxy, your power of attorney. That doesn't have to be anybody you're married to. If you want children, somebody to pick your children up, you can designate them on the emergent. I guess I didn't see from the presentation, how some of those things couldn't be gained in other very simple, universally recognized mechanisms. I guess that's the part that didn't, so I don't know if anybody else read something else differently.
I also said that to Ron. Why do we need it? So
Yeah.
he just said it just makes it easier for people. So, I mean, I don't know.
But I mean, the school system is going to have that designation. They can't, is it going to show up on the student application to become part of the school district? There's going to have to be some extra legal recognition of that partner, if you will, if they're going to have rights to pick up a child or do anything on that child's behalf.
Right. I mean, that bylaw isn't going to trump the probate and family court's ability to then determine who's going to be a guardian. If something were to happen to a parent or a guardian, I mean, if they could designate their partner, but they're not going to have legal standing. Our bylaw isn't going to give them legal standing. The court's still going to have. That's the part that seemed kind of a disconnect for me.
I agree.
Well, personally, I don't really support it, but on the other hand, I do support everyone's right to their own freedoms of choice. And if town meeting wants to vote for it, then I think he has the right to bring it to town meeting. I certainly
It
wouldn't.
it will be, because we know that the way that our moderator, if there's any positive motion, there's going to be discussion on it. So ultimately, all we're deciding tonight is kind of what recommendation do we give it?
Right.
And it'll still go for that full conversation in front of town meeting.
I would move a recommendation of indefinite postponement.
Patterson, second.
Okay, all those in favor of indefinite postponement: Brown,
Aye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, aye.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Okay, next we have petition 32, acknowledgement of Mashpee Wampanoag tribe at all public meetings.
Mr. Suso, do you need more explanation on our recommendation?
Or the ones you voted so far? No, I think we're good.
For the domestic partnership, okay.
Okay, for Article 32. What are folks' thoughts on this?
I could see at town meeting. I think at every single public meeting is too much.
Agreed.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
And it was a little bit, it seemed slightly unclear, even though the language says all public meetings. When we got the presentation, it didn't sound like all, there was a discussion. I think Sandy was saying things about, at graduation, or it sounded like it wasn't all public meetings, but I understand that that's the way it's written. So
I heard both. She
Yeah.
kept saying all public meetings, but the ones she described weren't all public meetings. I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? It wasn't an exclusive list, so. But I think for all public meetings, it's too much.
How about maybe all annual public meetings or biannual or something? I don't know. We shouldn't be crafting their language.
Well, I think Doug Jones's idea is a good one. To just limit it to town meeting. It's a public recognition of the Wampanoag tribe.
And so our choices are either recommend indefinite postponement, but input in our explanation, we could be supportive of the article if it were limited to town meeting. Or we do the same thing we did with Article 31, have our recommendation be with this amendment.
I would feel more comfortable with the first thing that you just said, Doug, only because the last time that when we did that the last time, it was really just taking out something that can't be done because the statute doesn't allow it. This change would really change the whole character of what I think the petitioners put forward. So I like your idea of, if we vote indefinite, if that's how the board votes, we do it with an explanation. That seems cleaner to me, but
I agree with
any
that.
other thoughts?
Agreed.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
All right, I
Okay.
would move that our recommendation be indefinite postponement, but in the explanation say we could be very supportive of this article if it were limited to town meeting.
Patterson, second.
Okay. Although I have a motion, a second, seeing no further discussion, all those by roll call: Brown,
Brown, aye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, aye.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Okay.
I like
and
your
so
ideas, Doug. I don't know where we would be without you.
I know.
And
In hot
language too.
water. Next we have Article, this is the 33 that we talked about, which has the funding component. What is the board's position on this particular article? If you recall, it was creating the task force and then appropriating funds for the child care support voucher program. So unfortunately, it is intertwined and not kind of broken down as two separate articles. So it really is both together.
Well, there certainly is a
I'd like to
need
leave
for
this to the
this.
Finance Committee, and if any of us individually want to speak, we can do so.
Okay. Doug Brown?
I was going to say, there certainly is a need for this. You know, childcare is so expensive now that a lot of people are better off just staying home and applying for welfare, which is unfortunate. It's usually it's a breaking point.
Yeah. So what are, and just in terms of process, is this board inclined to, because it's a money matter, have Finance Committee weigh in on this with their recommendation?
I don't know that it's such a money matter as much as a political action matter. If we're
Well,
going to
just remember,
create
there's a money component for the childcare part. You know what I mean? So there is an allocation of funds for that fund. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that makes sense.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Can you say that we would support a task force? I mean, in other words, can you break the petition in two pieces, or can you? Does it have to stay as one? Because that's the way it's written.
I think it. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
It's not a defined program, and it's a little bit wide open. They've thrown some numbers at us, but really it's not detailed. And I think it requires, some sort of town management oversight. I almost feel like, this could be something this school committee could pick up under the school district. I'm certainly sympathetic to it, but it is a little bit too open-ended for me to support it right now.
But they're asking us to create a select board task force, so it really is our wheelhouse.
Well, I don't mind the task force part, but I think the implication is somehow or other that the town is going to actually be able to subsidize, a daycare program. I think it's a separate.
So I suppose we could go ahead, Doug Jones. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
I just think we could do, as Sam said, make our recommendation being we support this creation of the task force, leave the recommendation of the money to the Finance Committee.
That's what I was just going to say. So, okay.
And that was my question earlier. Could you break it in two, and could we support the creation of a task force and not address the money?
Peter?
Just a process suggestion to accomplish what a couple of the members have suggested. So the money recommendation, as has been noted, will be the Finance Committee's printed recommendation. What we can do in the explanation is reference that the Select Board supports the creation of a task force, and just as a component of the explanation.
Great. Is that acceptable to this board?
Yes.
Okay, that is Doug Brown's, Patterson's motion and Doug
No,
Brown's
Patterson's
second. All right, Doug Jones and Patterson second. Okay, all those in favor by roll call. Brown.
Brown eye.
Jones.
Jones eye.
Taylor.
Taylor eye.
Patterson.
Patterson eye.
English Braga eye. Thank you, Peter. Okay, I think that is it for articles, correct?
Yes.
Correct. We don't need to talk about 34 with the Bell Tower Lane tennis courts.
That's CPC.
Those are all CPC.
No, all the rest of those are CPC.
Those are all money articles.
Okay, right.
Yep. So FinCom will weigh in. Okay, next we have a review and vote to approve minutes. Excuse me, December 7th, December 21. Any corrections?
I do have two. Page 7. If you look two-thirds of the way down, it starts off, Mr. Brown noted they have an in-house capability. That paragraph does not really communicate anything cleanly. Doug, can you clean it up?
Page 7, let's see. Noted they have in-house capability without the need to request set aside additional funding for a minor remodeling job. Need a person in town hall that is corporate Chico's replacement. Okay, so let's see, Mr. Patterson. This is for the Marks Building Committee. What they need, what they're asking for is a point person to coordinate the needs of that committee. But most committees don't really get their own personal point person, and I explained that to the committee, but that's the gist of what they're looking for.
Yeah, they were really, that was when they were really expressing, and I think in that presentation had really expressed the desire from their end to have the next person who would be an assistant town planner to be somebody with some experience in the way that Corey had with some historical components. That was what they were.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
So it was really a request for us to take that into consideration.
Yes.
In replacing
Correct.
that position in the town planner's office.
I'm not sure how you really change that wording to reflect that exactly, but I agree with you. What's here is not really catching it.
So I know Peter generally tries to wordsmith some of this. Does that make sense to you, Peter, what we've just said? Can we capture that's what Doug Brown was trying to convey?
We can address that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I have one more on page 12.
Okay.
We'll get to it. Oh, yes, it's right near the second line from the bottom. It says the select board may be having a joint meeting with the planning board, and it says 12/21/21. But this was something that took place back in early December. This meeting.
So it should be 12/21/20, and we didn't end up doing it that day, but yes.
So it should be 21/20.
Great, thank you.
And with
And
that,
with those
two edits, I move that we approve the minutes of the December 7th, 2020, and release them public access.
Second, Jones?
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor by roll call. Brown?
Brown, aye.
Jones?
Jones, aye.
Taylor?
Taylor, aye.
Patterson?
Patterson, aye.
English Braga, aye. Thank you. And
We don't have the minutes of the 21st, right?
right, no, we don't have them yet. Okay, individual selectmen's reports. Mr. Jones.
I just want to let this board know that I have decided not to run for re-election after 9 years of great enjoyment of working with all of you and with previous board members, but I think 3 terms is enough.
Well, I won't cry publicly because I won't subject people to that, but I think you know how everyone on this board and the folks in this community feel the service that you have provided for nearly a decade, which is just an enormous amount of time. And anybody who has sat here knows it's the way we sort of measure dogs' lives. Every year of being on the board is not equal to one actual 365-day period. So Doug, huge thanks. You always really keep us, and we're not saying goodbye to you tonight, but since we're talking about this, always keep us on task with really important focus on process, and process, is just everything, because people need to know it's transparent, it's consistent, and understand, just that we are doing the best that we can and trying to apply the same rules. And you really bring us back to center about that and a lot of other matters about this community that we know you care so much about. So you will be hard to replace, but
I had no gray hair when I started.
Yeah.
at least you still have hair. If you kept going, you may end up in a different position. So
You'd be headed this way.
yeah. So thank you. And we use this opportunity. I mean, I think, why Doug is sharing this is so that the public can understand that he's not going to run, and we can really start to think about, and folks out there can ask themselves, is it their time to really step up and dedicate their expertise, their passion, and their love for the community to work on this board the way that Doug has. And so that's really the reason for putting this out there so soon, even though we have a few more months before the election, so that people can really start to think about, if it's their time or someone they know can kind of fill that spot. So
So if they're
Hopefully we
thinking
will do
about
that.
it, they need to start to read the charter and really know all the rules, because Doug knows all the rules.
Because we will fail without that. So no pressure, but he'll still be around to weigh in. We know where he is.
He'll be in the chat function.
Yeah, he'll be in the chat function. So
I know how to use it.
thank you, Doug. Anybody else?
And thank you for your parents' service to our community as well. You're both your mom and your dad.
Yes.
So you trailed behind very significant footsteps.
That's right.
It's been a good run. You've done a great job.
Anyone else?
I attended a couple of meetings, but after this discussion, it isn't worth mentioning.
Yeah, I didn't do anything special.
Excellent. Julian, town manager's report.
I should
This is
do that
a
every
wonderful. You really set a good trend, Doug. You really can't go now. Go ahead, Julian.
It ain't so, Doug. Okay, yeah, just a couple items. I was pleased to attend and with Building Commissioner Rob Palmer, participate in a meeting with the Zoning Board of Appeals on Thursday evening, during which we reviewed and discussed collaborative processes to facilitate enforcement. So it was a very productive meeting. I also attended the weekly meeting of the Finance Committee on Tuesday, past as they continued their budget and warrant article deliberations. And this board's next meeting is scheduled joint session with the school committee for Monday, March 15th at 7 p.m. And the select board's next regular business meeting is set for Monday, March 22nd. That concludes my report. Thank you.
And
thank you.
speaking of enforcement, I want to thank you, Mr. Suso and Irie Mullen and Rod Palmer, for effectively addressing the situation we had on Pitch Pine Lane with the contractor's yard. It was kind of just set up on the fly, and I know the contractor was in a desperate position, but it had to be addressed, and you did a good job of doing that. So thank you.
Yes. On behalf of all those people, you're welcome. Yeah. Great work. You're right.
I move we adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Patterson, second.
Okay. All those in favor, Brown,
Brown, aye.
Jones,
Jones, aye.
Taylor,
Taylor, aye.
Patterson,
Patterson, aye.
English, Braga, aye. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
night.
Good night.
Thank
Stay
you, guys.
healthy.
We're going to have a second